Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the Quincy king who stole the Bankai of the head Captain Naruto x Bambietta, Bleach. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, King's Gambit. The sky split open like a wound above the Siriidii, dark energy pouring through the gash in reality. Sirens wailed across Soul Society as black-clad figures descended from the tear in space. At their center floated a man with spiky blonde hair, blue eyes cold as ice, wearing a pristine white uniform with black trim. Naruto Uzumaki, king of the Quincy, had arrived. "They're not prepared," he said, voice carrying across the void to his followers. "Seal the gateways. No one escapes." Behind him, a woman with short purple-black hair grinned wildly, her eyes flashing with excitement. Bambietta Basterbine spun her sword in her hand, already imagining the destruction to come. "About time," she said, sidling closer to Naruto. "I've been waiting to blow shit up for weeks." Naruto's lips twitched slightly, the closest thing to a smile he allowed himself these days. "Patience rewards those who survive to collect, Bambi." She rolled her eyes at the nickname but didn't protest. From anyone else, such familiarity would earn them an explosive end. "Stern Ritter," Naruto called out, his voice carrying to all his elite warriors. "Remember your assignments. First Division headquarters is mine alone." Without waiting for acknowledgement, Naruto vanished in a burst of speed that left afterimages in his wake. The Quincy army descended upon Soul Society like a storm, their white uniforms stark against the blue sky. Captain Commander Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto stood on the balcony of the 1st Division barracks, watching the invasion unfold across the Siriidii. His weathered face betrayed no emotion, but his spiritual pressure rolled off him in waves that made the air shimmer with heat. "So they've finally come," he said to his lieutenant. "The Quincy." "Sir, reports indicate they've blocked all Senkamen gates," Lieutenant Sasuke reported. "Communications with the world of the living have been cut off." Yamamoto opened his eyes fully, something he rarely did except in times of greatest danger. "Gather the captains for battle. This is no raid, it's a full invasion." Before Sasuke could respond, a tremendous spiritual pressure descended upon the 1st Division grounds. Both men turned to see Naruto standing casually at the entrance to the balcony, as if he'd been invited for afternoon tea. "Captain Commander Yamamoto," Naruto said, offering a slight bow that somehow managed to seem more mocking than respectful. "The last time Quincy and Shinigami met in these numbers, your people nearly committed genocide against mine." Yamamoto's spiritual pressure intensified. "You dare invade the Siriidii? Who are you, boy?" "The name is Naruto Uzumaki. Though your archives might know me better as Yawatch Reborn." The name sent a visible shock through Yamamoto. His hand tightened on his staff. "Impossible. Yawatch was defeated, not destroyed," Naruto cut in. His soul scattered but not erased. "And now I stand before you, carrying his legacy and his power." Sasuke moved with blinding speed, his sword aimed at Naruto's throat, but the blade passed through empty air as Naruto stepped sideways through space itself. "Lieutenant Chojiro Sasuke," Naruto reappeared behind the man. "Your Bankai controls lightning. Impressive, but useless against me." Before Sasuke could turn, Naruto placed his hand on the lieutenant's back. Blue light flared, and Sasuke collapsed, his powers completely sealed. Yamamoto's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You will regret this arrogance, Quincy." The ancient Shinigami's staff dissolved to reveal his Zanpakuto. Heat began radiating from the blade, distorting the air around them. "Reduce all creation to ash, Ryujin Jaka." Flames erupted from the sword, engulfing the balcony and surrounding area in an inferno hot enough to melt stone. Naruto raised a hand, creating a shield of erasure that parted the flames around him. "The strongest Zanpakuto of all," Naruto acknowledged. "But even flames can be extinguished. Across the Siriidii, Bambietta tore through a squadron of Shinigami, her spiritual power turning everything she touched into bombs. Buildings exploded around her, debris raining down as she laughed. "Is this all you've got?" she taunted, spinning to face another group of attackers. "I expected better from the mighty Godii 13. A shadow fell over her, and Bambietta looked up to see a massive man in a captain's haori bearing down on her. Captain Sajin Kamamura swung his enormous sword, the air pressure alone cracking the ground beneath her feet. Bambietta grinned and caught the blade between her fingers. "Doggy wants to play." She infused the captain's Zanpakuto with her power. "Fetch!" The sword exploded, sending Kamamura staggering backward, his fur singed and smoking. Before he could recover, Bambietta appeared in front of him, her hand on his chest. Bursting heartbeat, she whispered, her eyes gleaming with malice. Kamamura roared in pain as his internal organs began to detonate one by one, controlled explosions that dropped him to his knees without killing him. "Where's your captain commander now, pup?" Bambietta leaned in close, her breath hot on his face. "My king is probably turning him to ash as we speak." Despite his pain, Kamamura growled, "You underestimate Yamamoto Dano. Your king will burn." Something flashed in Bambietta's eyes, not fear, exactly, but concern. She glanced toward the first division, where columns of flame could be seen rising above the buildings. "We'll see who burns," she said, but her usual playful tone had hardened. Naruto and Yamamoto faced each other in the center of a burning crater that had once been the First Division headquarters. The captain commander's flames had intensified to the point where they melted everything within a 100-meter radius, yet Naruto stood unharmed, a sphere of blue-white energy protecting him. "You fight well for one so young," Yamamoto acknowledged, his body wreathed in fire. "But you faced the experience of 10,000 years." Naruto's eyes changed, the blue irises shifting to reveal a pattern of concentric circles. "And you faced the eyes that have seen every possible future. Including yours, Genryosai Shigekuni Yamamoto." The captain commander raised his blade. "Then you know what comes next. Bankai, Zenka no Tachi." The flames surrounding Yamamoto vanished, seeming to be drawn into his blade. The temperature skyrocketed, and all moisture in the air evaporated instantly. His sword glowed white-hot, radiating heat that could vaporize anything it touched. "North, Tenchi Kaijin," Yamamoto said, swinging his sword. A slash of pure heat and destruction shot toward Naruto, who raised his hand. From his palm emerged a bow of pure rapier, and he fired an arrow that met the heat wave head-on. The collision sent shockwaves across the Siriidii, shattering windows and crumbling walls miles away. "I've waited centuries for this moment," Naruto said, forming a sword of his own from spiritual energy. "To face the man who ordered the extermination of my people." He moved forward with impossible speed, his blade meeting Yamamoto's. Where they touched, reality itself seemed to distort from the opposing forces. "Your people were disrupting the balance of souls," Yamamoto countered, his ancient eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Millions would have perished if we hadn't acted." "So you claim," Naruto spat, disengaging and launching a flurry of attacks that forced even the mighty captain commander to give ground. Yet the Shinigami monopoly on souls continues unchallenged. Their battle intensified, spiritual pressure crashing against spiritual pressure. Yamamoto's Bankai scorched the very air around them, while Naruto's Quincy powers absorbed and redirected the energy in a display of skill that belied his youthful appearance. "West, Zanjitsu Goki," Yamamoto intoned, his body becoming wrapped in flames so intense they were invisible to the naked eye. "Touch me, and you will be reduced to ash." Naruto smiled coldly. "Your mistake, Captain Commander, is thinking I need to touch you at all." He raised his hand, and 5 glowing blue crosses appeared in the air around Yamamoto. The ancient Shinigami's eyes widened in recognition just before Naruto closed his fist. Sankt Bogen. The crosses erupted into arrows of pure rapier from all directions, piercing through Yamamoto's flame armor. Blood spattered on the scorched ground as the captain commander staggered. Impossible, Yamamoto gasped. No Quincy technique should be able to penetrate Zanka no Tachi. Naruto stepped closer, his eyes still displaying the concentric pattern. I told you, I am Yawatch reborn. The Almighty sees all paths, all weaknesses, even in your ultimate technique. Yamamoto roared and lunged forward, his sword aiming straight for Naruto's heart. South, Kaka Jumanokushi Deizojin. The air behind the captain commander shimmered, and the charred corpses of all those who had fallen to his flames over thousands of years began to materialize, an army of the incinerated dead. Naruto didn't flinch. He raised his hand, and in it appeared a medallion bearing the Wandenrake insignia. This ends now. The medallion glowed, and suddenly Yamamoto's Bankai began to distort, as if being pulled away from him. The captain commander's eyes widened in genuine shock. What are you? Yamamoto began, but his words cut off as Zanka no Tachi vanished from his grip, leaving him holding nothing but an ordinary katana. The flames disappeared. The heat dissipated. And in Naruto's hand appeared a replica of Yamamoto's Bankai, burning with the same intensity but now controlled by Quincy Erasure. Bankai stealing, Naruto explained, examining the stolen Zanka no Tachi with appreciation. A technique we've been perfecting for this very day. Your ultimate weapon now belongs to the Wandenrake. Yamamoto's face, for the first time in centuries, showed naked fear. Without his Bankai, he was still formidable, but against an opponent who could now wield Zanka no Tachi against him, his options were severely limited. Kill me then, the old warrior said, straightening his back with dignity. I will not beg for mercy from a Quincy. Naruto studied him for a moment, then shook his head. Death would be too merciful, Genryosai Shigekuni Yamamoto. I want you to live to see everything you've built burn to ash, by the very flames you once controlled. The stolen Bankai flared in Naruto's hand, and he swung it in a wide arc. A wall of invisible heat raced outward, slicing through the remaining First Division buildings like they were made of paper. Within seconds, the entire complex was ablaze. Yamamoto, weakened by his wounds and the loss of his Bankai, could only watch as Naruto turned his back on him. This is only the beginning, the Quincy King said over his shoulder. The Wandenrake has returned, and Soul Society will fall. Bambietta felt the change in spiritual pressure immediately, a surge of power so intense it made her catch her breath. She kicked away the unconscious form of Captain Kamimura and gazed toward the First Division, where the familiar inferno had transformed into something different, the same flames, but now infused with Quincy Erasure. He did it, she whispered, a smile spreading across her face. The mad bastard actually did it. All around her, Shinigami were retreating in disarray, their coordinated defense collapsing without Yamamoto's leadership. The other Sternritter were driving forward, each using their unique abilities to devastating effect. A flash of movement caught Bambietta's attention, and she turned to see a figure in a white captain's haori approaching. Captain Shunsui Kairaku, his usual laid-back demeanor replaced by grim determination. Well, Bambietta called out, twirling her sword. The ladies' man. Himself. Come to avenge your boss. Kairaku tipped his straw hat. Actually, I prefer to avoid further bloodshed if possible. Perhaps we could discuss terms. Bambietta laughed. Terms? Your captain commander just lost his Bankai. You're in no position to negotiate. All the more reason to talk before more people die on both sides, Kairaku replied reasonably. I'm sure your king didn't come here just to steal Yamaji's Bankai. There must be a larger goal. Sorry, flower boy, Bambietta said, charging her sword with explosive energy. I don't do diplomacy. Before she could attack, a hand fell on her shoulder. She didn't need to look to know who it was, the spiritual pressure alone told her. That's enough, Bambietta, Naruto said quietly. Captain Kairaku is right about one thing, we didn't come just for the Bankai. Kairaku's eyes narrowed as he assessed the blonde Quincy. You're their leader. Naruto Uzumaki, king of the Wandenrake, he introduced himself with a slight bow. And yes, I'd be happy to discuss terms, after you surrender Soul Society to Quincy control. Despite the dire situation, Kairaku chuckled. That's quite the opening position in a negotiation. It's not a negotiation, Naruto replied, his voice hardening. It's an ultimatum. I now possess Zanka no Tachi. Your captain commander is defeated. Half your captains are either unconscious or sealed. The Siriidii is burning. He gestured around them, where white-clad Quincy were systematically taking control of key strategic points across the city. You have 1 hour to order all Shinigami to lay down their Zanpakuto and surrender, Naruto continued. Anyone still fighting after that deadline will be eliminated. Kairaku's expression remained calm, but his eyes had lost all trace of humor. And if we refuse outright? In answer, Naruto raised the stolen Bankai. Flames erupted along the blade, and the temperature around them rose dramatically. Then I'll reduce the Siriidii to ash and rebuild on its ruins. Bambietta couldn't help the shiver of excitement that ran through her at his words. This was the Naruto she had pledged her loyalty to, ruthless, powerful, and utterly committed to their cause. I'll relay your message, Kairaku said finally. But I wouldn't expect a warm reception. Naruto nodded. 1 hour, Captain. Choose wisely. As Kairaku disappeared in a flash step, Bambietta turned to Naruto, her eyes bright with battle lust and admiration. That was fucking awesome, she said. The look on his face when you pulled out Zanka no Tachi. For the first time since the invasion began, Naruto allowed himself a genuine smile. Your work wasn't bad either. I saw what you did to Captain Kamimura. Bambietta preened under his praise. Just warming up. So, you really think they'll surrender? Not a chance, Naruto replied, gazing out over the burning Siriidii. But it gives us time to consolidate our positions. The real battle is just beginning. He turned to her, his expression turning serious. Rally the Stern Ritter at the 1st Division grounds. I need to address everyone before the Shinigami regroup. Bambietta nodded and turned to go, but Naruto caught her wrist. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through her that had nothing to do with spiritual power. Be careful, he said quietly. The captains are desperate now. They'll fight even harder. Something warm bloomed in Bambietta's chest at his concern. Worried about me, Your Majesty? That's not like you. Naruto released her wrist and looked away. I'd hate to lose my best Sternritter on the first day of war. It would be inefficient. Bambietta grinned, seeing through his detachment. Sure, inefficient. I'll be careful if you will. She vanished in a burst of speed, leaving Naruto alone amid the destruction. He looked down at Yamamoto's stolen Bankai, feeling the immense power thrumming through it. Everything was proceeding according to plan. So why did he feel this strange unease? 16 years earlier, in a small village hidden among dense forests, a blonde-haired boy ran through the streets, pursued by angry villagers. Tears streamed down his face as rocks and insults were hurled at him with equal venom. Monster! Demon brat! Get out of our village! 7-year-old Naruto Uzumaki didn't understand their hatred. He didn't know why everyone looked at him with those cold, hateful eyes. All he knew was pain and loneliness. As he rounded a corner into a dead-end alley, Naruto realized he was trapped. He turned to face the mob, pressing his back against the wall. Please, he sobbed. I didn't do anything wrong. The villagers advanced, some holding improvised weapons. Behind them, Naruto spotted a few ninja from the village watching impassively, making no move to help him. Just as the first villager reached for him, everything froze. The world around Naruto seemed to stop, colors inverting briefly before returning to normal. The villagers stood motionless, like statues caught in mid-action. What the? Naruto whispered, waving his hand in front of an attacker's face. They cannot see or hear you at the moment, came a deep voice from behind him. Naruto spun around to find a tall, imposing man with long black hair and strange markings on his face. He wore white robes with a black cross emblazoned on the back. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, instinctively backing away. The man knelt to meet Naruto's eyes. "My name is Yawach. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, are not what they say you are." "How do you know my name?" Yawach smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Because I have been watching you for a very long time. You are special, Naruto. More special than you could possibly imagine." "Special?" Naruto repeated, hope and suspicion warring in his young face. "Is it because of the fox? The nine tails?" "The fox demon is merely a parasite attached to something far greater, your true heritage." Yawach extended his hand. "Come with me, and I will show you who you really are." Naruto hesitated, looking back at the frozen villagers, then at the mysterious stranger offering escape. "Will I have to come back here?" he asked softly. Yawach's expression hardened. "Never. Where I will take you, you will be honored, not hated. Trained, not abused. And one day, you will return not as their victim, but as their king." The word king resonated strangely in Naruto's chest. Something deep within him responded to it, like an echo of a memory he'd never formed. Slowly, Naruto reached out and took Yawach's hand. "Show me," he said. The world around them shimmered and dissolved, leaving behind a frozen moment that would never resume. Naruto Uzumaki vanished from the elemental nations that day, leaving behind only mysteries and unanswered questions. And in the shadows between worlds, Yawach smiled at the culmination of centuries of planning. The vessel had been secured. The legacy would continue. The Quincy would rise again. Back in the present, Naruto stood before his assembled stern ritter on the grounds of the 1st Division headquarters. 26 warriors, each bearing a letter designation representing a specific power or ability granted by Naruto himself. His elite guard. His chosen family. "Today marks the beginning of our vengeance," he announced, Zenka no Tachi still burning in his hand. "For 1,000 years, the Shinigami have hunted our kind, driving us to the brink of extinction. Today, we have proven that even their strongest weapon can be taken from them." Murmurs of approval ran through the assembled Quincy. Bambietta stood at the front, her eyes never leaving Naruto's face. "The Shinigami will not surrender," Naruto continued. "They are too proud, too set in their ways. Which means we must be prepared for their counterattack." He turned to a tall, thin man with narrow eyes. "Askin, what is the status of our defensive perimeters?" Askin Nak Lovar, Stern Ritter, D, the death-dealing, stepped forward with a lazy smile. "Fully operational, Your Majesty. I've personally adjusted the lethal dose threshold around our key positions. Any Shinigami approaching will find the very air toxic to their spiritual bodies." Naruto nodded and turned to another figure, a muscular man with a mohawk. "Bazb, your report." "Heat sources detected in the underground prison beneath the Siriidii, Bazb, Stern Ritter, H, the heat, reported with a grin. "Looks like they're trying to break out some heavy hitters they had locked up. Want me to barbecue the whole place?" Naruto considered for a moment. "No. Let them free their prisoners. Desperation makes them predictable." He turned to address the entire group again. "The Shinigami believe they fight to preserve balance. What they fail to understand is that true balance cannot exist in a world where one group holds absolute power over the cycle of souls." His voice grew more passionate, his eyes intense. "We fight not just for vengeance, but for freedom. Freedom for all souls to choose their path in the afterlife. Freedom from the tyranny of soul society." The Stern Ritter responded with cheers and raised fists. All except one, a tall, bespectacled man who watched Naruto with calculating eyes. Naruto noticed the quiet dissent but chose to ignore it for now. "Return to your assigned sectors. When the Shinigami attack, show them the true power of the Wandenrake. As the stern Ritter dispersed, Bambietta lingered behind, watching as Naruto stared thoughtfully at the stolen Bankai. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, moving to stand beside him. "Just remembering," he replied, his voice distant. "The first time Yawatch showed me what a Bankai was. I could barely comprehend such power back then." Bambietta studied his profile, noting the tension in his jaw. "Having second thoughts about all this?" Naruto shook his head. "No. Just, considering the weight of what we've started. There's no going back now." "Would you want to?" she challenged. "After everything the Shinigami did to our people?" His blue eyes hardened. "Never. But victory requires more than just power, Bambi. It requires understanding your enemy, and yourself." She stepped closer, her shoulder brushing against his. "Well, I understand that we're winning. And I understand that you just pulled off something no one thought possible. That's enough for me." Naruto turned to face her fully, and Bambietta felt that strange flutter in her chest again. Despite all her bravado and bloodlust, something about his direct gaze always made her feel exposed. "Is it?" he asked quietly. "Is victory enough for you, Bambietta Basturbine? Or do you want something more?" The question caught her off guard. For a fleeting moment, she felt the urge to tell him the truth, that somewhere along the way, her loyalty had transformed into something deeper, more complicated. That when she fought, it wasn't just for the Quincy cause or the thrill of battle, but for him. Instead, she smirked and flipped her hair. Victory, carnage, and maybe a decent drink afterward. What more could a girl want? Naruto held her gaze a moment longer, as if searching for something, then nodded. "Get some rest while you can. The real fight starts soon." As he walked away, Bambietta's smirk faded. She looked down at her hands, still stained with the blood of Shinigami she'd fought earlier. "What more could I want?" she repeated to herself. The answer burned in her chest, unspoken and dangerous. Deep beneath the Siriidii, in a prison cell designed to hold the most dangerous criminal soul society had ever known, Sosuke Aizen smiled as he felt the chaos unfolding above. The former captain sat bound to a chair, his body wrapped in black restraints, his eyes covered by a metal visor. Despite these limitations, he could sense everything happening in the world above, the invasion, the battles, the fall of Yamamoto's Bankai. "Fascinating," he murmured to himself. "The Quincy move earlier than expected. And their leader, such interesting spiritual pressure." The door to his cell opened, revealing Captain Suifeng of the 2nd Division, her face tight with anger and urgency. "You felt it, didn't you?" she demanded without preamble. "The Quincy invasion." Aizen's smile widened. "I did indeed, Captain. Quite the predicament you find yourselves in. Yamamoto Soteishu has fallen. His Bankai was stolen." The admission clearly pained her, but necessity outweighed pride. "Central 46 has authorized your temporary release to assist in defense of the Siriidii." A soft chuckle escaped Aizen's lips. "How desperate you must be, to turn to me for salvation." "Don't flatter yourself," Suifeng snapped. "You'll remain bound and under constant supervision. One wrong move, and I'll personally ensure you never see daylight again." "Of course," Aizen agreed smoothly. "I would expect nothing less. But tell me, Captain, what exactly do you hope I can do against an enemy who can steal Bankai?" Suifeng's expression darkened. "Central 46 believes your knowledge of the Hogyoku might provide insights into countering their techniques. Your expertise in spiritual manipulation is unparalleled." "Flattery, Captain. From you?" Aizen's tone was mocking. "Very well. I accept your generous offer of a temporary parole. It will be enlightening to meet these Quincy invaders face to face." As guards moved in to prepare him for transport, Aizen's smile never wavered. Beneath his blindfold, his eyes gleamed with anticipation. Everything was proceeding exactly as he had foreseen. The hour Naruto had given Soul Society passed quickly. As expected, no surrender came. Instead, the remaining captains had reorganized their forces and prepared for a counterattack. Naruto stood atop Sokayaku Hill, the highest point in the Siriidii, watching the Shinigami movements through his almighty eyes. Beside him, Bambietta fidgeted impatiently. "They're taking forever," she complained. "Can't we just attack now?" "Patience," Naruto advised. "Let them commit to their strategy before we disrupt it." Bambietta sighed dramatically. "You're no fun sometimes, you know that." Before Naruto could respond, a massive surge of spiritual pressure erupted from the 12th Division area. The ground trembled, and a colossal creature burst from the research facility, a hideous amalgamation of hollow and Shinigami parts, easily the size of a skyscraper. "What the actual fuck is that?" Bambietta breathed, her eyes widening. "Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi's answer to our Bankai stealing," Naruto replied, unperturbed. "A biological weapon designed to target Quincy specifically." The monster roared, its multiple mouths emitting a sound that made even hardened Sternritter wince. It began shambling toward the Quincy-held territory, crushing buildings beneath its massive feet. "Should I blow it up?" Bambietta asked, already forming an explosive charge in her hand. Naruto shook his head. "No. This is precisely the opportunity I've been waiting for." He raised his hand, and the stolen Zenka no Tachi materialized in his grip. "Watch and learn why Yamamoto was feared for thousands of years." Naruto swung the Bankai in a wide arc, unleashing a wave of heat so intense it distorted the very air it passed through. When it struck Kuratsuchi's creature, the monster didn't burn, it simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even ash remained. The shockwave continued onward, carving a perfect semicircle of destruction through the Siriidii. Buildings, streets, and unfortunately, any Shinigami in its path, vanished in an instant. Bambietta whistled low. "Holy shit. That's beautiful." Naruto lowered the blade, his expression grim. That was merely a fraction of its true power. Yamamoto always held back, fearing the destruction his Bankai could cause if fully unleashed. "And you?" Bambietta asked, eyeing him curiously. "Will you hold back too?" Naruto met her gaze, his blue eyes cold. "I will do whatever is necessary to achieve our goals. No more, no less." Before she could respond, a new spiritual pressure appeared behind them, familiar, yet altered somehow. They turned to find a skin approaching, accompanied by a blindfolded prisoner in black restraints. "Your Majesty," a skin called out, his usual lackadaisical manner replaced with unusual urgency. "The Shinigami released this one from the underground prison. He insisted on speaking with you personally." The prisoner raised his head, and despite the blindfold, seemed to look directly at Naruto. "So you're the one who stole Yamamoto's Bankai. Impressive." Naruto studied the bound man carefully. "Sosuke Aizen. I wondered when you'd make an appearance. You know me." Aizen seemed pleased. "I'm flattered. I know everything about Soul Society's history," Naruto replied. "Including your attempt to overthrow it. An admirable goal, if somewhat flawed in execution." Aizen's lips curved into a smile. "Perhaps. But I come bearing information you might find valuable, about the true nature of the Soul King, and why your ancestor Yawatch sought to destroy him." Bambietta tensed beside Naruto. "This is obviously a trap." "Obviously," Naruto agreed. "But sometimes the bait is worth the risk." He stepped closer to Aizen, studying the complex restraints binding the former captain. "Tell me, Aizen, what could you possibly know about Yawatch that I don't already?" Aizen's smile widened. "Have you ever wondered why a being of Yawatch's power failed in his original rebellion? Why the Soul King, despite being essentially imprisoned, remains the linchpin of reality?" "I know the history," Naruto said, but something in his tone betrayed interest. "You know what Yawatch wanted you to know," Aizen countered. But there are deeper truths, truths that could change how you approach this war. Bambietta moved forward aggressively. Stop playing games. Either say something useful or I'll blow your head off. Aizen turned his blindfolded face toward her. Impatient, isn't she? But very well. Here's a truth for you, the Hogyoku I created was modeled after a fragment of the Soul King's power, the same power that flows through your Quincy bloodline. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Explain. Release me from these restraints, and I'll tell you everything, Aizen offered. Including how to ensure your victory over Soul Society is permanent, not just a temporary conquest. For a long moment, Naruto considered the prisoner before him. Then, to Bambietta's shock, he raised his hand and placed it on Aizen's restraints. Your Majesty, she protested. You can't seriously, I'm not freeing him completely, Naruto interrupted. But I need to see his eyes when he speaks. Truth and lies are both written there. Blue light flared from Naruto's palm, and Aizen's blindfold disintegrated. The prisoner blinked, adjusting to the light, then fixed Naruto with his penetrating gaze. Interesting, Aizen murmured, studying Naruto's face. You're not quite what I expected. Speak your piece, Aizen, Naruto commanded. Before I decide you're more trouble than you're worth. Very well. Aizen's voice took on a lecturer's tone. The Soul King exists in a state between life and death, his power artificially contained by Soul Society. What few know is that he was once whole, the original being who existed before the separation of the living world, Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo. This is basic history, Naruto said impatiently. What isn't basic, Aizen continued, undeterred, is that fragments of his power exist throughout the spiritual realms. Yhwach possessed one such fragment. The Hogyoku is another. And there are others, scattered and hidden by the original members of Central 46. Naruto's interest was clearly piqued now. You're suggesting there are artifacts that contain pieces of the Soul King's power? More than artifacts, Aizen said, leaning forward despite his restraints. Individuals. Beings who unknowingly carry fragments of the original God within them. Find them, unite them under your banner, and you won't just defeat Soul Society, you'll have the power to remake reality itself. Bambietta watched Naruto's face carefully, seeing calculation and ambition warring with skepticism. Why tell us this? She demanded of Aizen. What do you get out of it? Aizen's smile was enigmatic. Let's just say our goals may align more closely than you think. I sought to take the Soul King's place. Perhaps your king has the better claim to that throne. Naruto stepped back, his decision made. Return him to Askin's custody. I need to consider this information carefully. As Askin led Aizen away, the prisoner called over his shoulder, time is short, Quincy King. Soul Society has more weapons than you know, and your Bankai theft won't surprise them twice. When they were alone again, Bambietta turned to Naruto. You don't actually believe that snake, do you? Every lie contains a kernel of truth, Naruto replied thoughtfully. Aizen wouldn't risk approaching us unless he stood to gain something significant. Or unless he's playing both sides, Bambietta pointed out. He could be feeding us bullshit while helping the Shinigami develop a countermeasure to our Bankai stealing. Naruto smiled faintly. Your paranoia is one of your most charming qualities, Bambi. She rolled her eyes but couldn't quite suppress her answering smile. Someone has to watch your back. And I'm glad it's you. The simple sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could respond, a massive explosion rocked the eastern sector of the Siriidii. Both of them turned to see a column of ice rising into the sky, followed by a surge of spiritual pressure that could only belong to a captain-level Shinigami. Captain Hitsugaya, Naruto identified. He's engaged with Tsangdu. Bambietta's expression turned eager. Time to join the fun. Naruto nodded, his moment of openness replaced by the cold determination of a wartime leader. The Shinigami have launched their counterattack. Exactly as I predicted. He raised Zenka no Tachi, flames dancing along the blade. Let's remind them why they feared the Quincy for 1,000 years. Together, they vanished from Sokayaku Hill, racing toward the battle that would determine the fate of Seoul society, and perhaps, if Aizen's words held any truth, the fate of reality itself. Chapter 2, Scarlet Shadow's ice shattered against rapier arrows as Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya battled Sangdu in the eastern sector of the Siriidii. The young captain's face was twisted with fury, his stolen Bankai now in the hands of his Quincy opponent. "Give it back," Hitsugaya snarled, unleashing a barrage of ice shards with his sealed Zanpakuto. "Hyarinmaru doesn't belong to you." Sangdu, stern Ritter, the iron, deflected the attack with his steel-hard skin. "The Bankai belongs to those with the strength to wield it, Shinigami." He raised Hitsugaya's stolen Daiguren Hyarinmaru, ice dragons forming around him. Like this. The ice dragons surged forward, faster and more powerful than Hitsugaya remembered his own Bankai being. He dodged desperately, but one caught his leg, freezing it solid. "Fuck," he hissed, smashing the ice with his sword. "Language, Captain," came a mocking voice from above. Hitsugaya looked up to see Bambietta perched on a broken wall, swinging her legs like a child on a playground. Her eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "Stern Ritter," he acknowledged, shifting his stance to face this new threat. "The one and only, she replied with a mock bow. "Well, the only one that matters anyway." She hopped down, landing lightly on her feet. Sangdu frowned at her intrusion. "This is my fight, Basterbine." Bambietta waved him off. "His Majesty wants this wrapped up. You've had your fun playing with ice cubes." Hitsugaya's eyes narrowed. "Where is your leader? The one who stole Yamamoto Sotecho's Bankai?" "Funny you should ask," Bambietta grinned, just as a massive wave of heat washed over the battlefield. Naruto appeared beside her in a flash, Zenka no Tachi burning at his side. The temperature skyrocketed, melting Hitsugaya's ice attacks before they fully formed. "Captain Hitsugaya," Naruto greeted calmly. "I've heard impressive things about you. Youngest captain in Seoul Society's history." Hitsugaya gripped his Zanpakuto tighter. "And you're the one responsible for all this." "The Quincy King." "Guilty as charged," Naruto replied with a slight nod. "Though, responsible, implies blame. I prefer to think of it as, correcting a historical injustice." "By killing innocent Shinigami?" Hitsugaya demanded. "Innocent?" Naruto's voice hardened. "Tell me, Captain, how much do you know about the first Quincy extermination? How many women and children died screaming under Shinigami blades?" Before Hitsugaya could respond, multiple spiritual pressures converged on their location. Captains Byakuya Kachiki, Kenpachi Zaraki, and Retsu Unohana appeared, surrounding the three Quincy. "Looks like the guest list just got upgraded," Bambietta murmured, excitement thrumming through her voice. Byakuya stepped forward, his expression coldly furious. "Return what you have stolen and surrender. This is your only warning." Naruto surveyed the four captains with apparent unconcern. 4 on 3. "Those aren't very sporting odds, Captain Kachiki." "We're not here to be sporting," Kenpachi growled, his jagged Zanpakuto resting on his shoulder. "We're here to cut you into pieces." Unohana, normally the picture of calm, radiated a deadly intent that made even Bambietta pause. "The Gotei 13 has not forgotten how to fight without Bankai." Naruto smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." He raised his hand, and 20 Quincy soldiers appeared around them, each bearing a bow of pure rapier. "Kill the captains," Naruto ordered. "Except Hitsugaya. I have questions for him." The battle erupted in an instant. Kenpachi charged forward with a manic grin, cutting down 3 Quincy with a single sweep of his blade. Byakuya's Senbonzakura shredded through the Quincy ranks despite being in its sealed state. Unohana moved with terrifying efficiency, each strike precise and lethal. But the tide turned quickly when Bambietta entered the fray. She touched a nearby building and infused it with her explosive power. The entire structure detonated, sending deadly shrapnel toward the Shinigami captains. "Scatter, Senbon Sakura," Byakuya commanded, his blade dissolving into thousands of tiny blades to shield himself and his fellow captains from the debris. Naruto used the distraction to appear behind Hitsugaya, placing a hand on the young captain's shoulder. Blue light flared, and Hitsugaya collapsed, paralyzed but conscious. "I admire your courage, Captain," Naruto said quietly as chaos unfolded around them. "So I'll give you a choice that your predecessors never gave my people. Join us, or die here." Hitsugaya spat blood. "Go to hell." "Been there," Naruto replied. "It's overrated." He lifted the paralyzed captain and turned to Tsangdu, returned to the ice palace with him. "I want him alive for questioning." Tsangdu nodded and took Hitsugaya from Naruto's arms. With a flash of Hirenkyaku, he vanished. Naruto turned his attention back to the battle, where Bambietta was gleefully trading blows with Kenpachi. Despite the captain's overwhelming strength, she danced around his attacks, leaving explosive traps with every touch. "Stand still so I can cut you." Kenpachi roared, his face split in a bloodthirsty grin despite the burns covering his body. "Where's the fun in that?" Bambietta laughed, flipping over his head and planting her palm between his shoulder blades. Boom! The explosion sent Kenpachi flying forward, crashing through several walls. But to Bambietta's shock, he emerged laughing, his Ryatsu swelling to even greater heights. "Finally, someone who can take a hit," he bellowed. Before they could continue, Naruto appeared between them. "Enough playing, Bambietta. We have what we came for." "I'm just getting started," she protested, but the look in Naruto's eyes silenced her objections. Naruto raised Zanka no Tachi and swung it in a wide arc, north, Tenchi Kaijin. A slash of pure heat erupted from the blade, forcing all the Shinigami captains to retreat. In the confusion, Naruto grabbed Bambietta's wrist and pulled her into Hirenkyaku, vanishing from the battlefield. They reappeared in the Ice Palace, the Wandanreka's fortress constructed within the Siriidii during the initial invasion. Naruto released her wrist immediately, his expression unreadable. "What the hell?" Bambietta demanded. "I had Kenpachi on the ropes." "You were enjoying yourself too much," Naruto replied coolly. "This isn't a game, Bambi." "I know that," she snapped. "But I had him." "Since when do we run from a fight?" "Since completing the mission became more important than your entertainment." Naruto's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "We needed Hitsugaya. We have him. Everything else was unnecessary risk." Bambietta's eyes flashed dangerously. "Unnecessary risk? You're the one who stole Yamamoto's Bankai and practically begged all of Soul Society to come after you." For a moment, tension crackled between them like one of Bambietta's explosions waiting to detonate. Then, unexpectedly, Naruto's expression softened. "You're right," he admitted, turning away to look out over the partially destroyed Siriidii visible through the ice walls. "I've been reckless." The admission caught Bambietta completely off guard. In all the years she'd served under Naruto, she'd never heard him acknowledge a mistake. "Okay, who are you and what have you done with my king?" she asked, only half joking. Naruto's lips quirked in a brief smile. "Still me. Just, reassessing our approach." He turned back to her, his blue eyes more intense than usual. "Aizen's information got me thinking. If what he says is true, there may be a better way to achieve our goals than all-out war." Bambietta frowned. "You're not seriously considering trusting that snake, are you?" "Not trusting. Verifying." Naruto walked toward a large map of Soul Society displayed on an ice table. "Which is why I needed Hitsugaya. The 10th Division archives contain some of the oldest records in Soul Society, including, if I'm right, documents relating to the original Soul King." Bambietta moved to stand beside him, studying the map. And you think the ice brat will just tell us where to find these records? No, Naruto replied. But Sangdu now controls his Bankai. Zanpakuto spirits know things their wielders don't always consciously remember. Clever, Bambietta conceded, impressed despite her lingering irritation. Naruto glanced at her. I need you to do something for me. Something important. Name it. Find Hashwolf. Tell him to meet me in the throne room. Naruto's expression turned grave. And Bambi? Don't tell anyone else about Aizen's claims or our interest in the Soul King. Not yet. She frowned. What's going on, Naruto? You're acting weird. Just being cautious, he replied, but she could tell he was holding something back. There are forces at work here beyond even what we understood when we planned this invasion. Before Bambietta could press further, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. A young Quincy soldier appeared, bowing low. Your Majesty, urgent news from the southern sector. Lieutenant Renji Abarai has broken through our defenses with some kind of modified Bankai that we couldn't steal. Naruto's eyes narrowed. So they've found a countermeasure already. Interesting. He turned to Bambietta. Find Hashwolf. I'll deal with this. With that, he vanished, leaving Bambietta standing alone, confusion and concern warring on her face. Deep within the ice palace, Jugram Hashwolf, Sternritter, B, the balance, stood before an ornate mirror. His long blonde hair fell over his shoulders as he gazed at his reflection, or rather, at what the mirror truly showed him. The pieces move as expected, he said quietly. He's becoming curious about the Soul King, just as you predicted. The reflection shifted, revealing not Hashwolf's face but that of an older man with dark hair and distinctive facial scars. Of course, the reflection replied in a deep voice. The boy follows the path laid before him, as all pawns do. He is more than a mere pawn, Hashwolf objected. His power grows daily. The Almighty manifests in him more strongly than even you anticipated. The reflection's eyes narrowed. Do not forget your place, Hashwolf. He is but a vessel, my vessel. Everything he has, everything he is, comes from me. And what of the girl? Bambietta grows closer to him each day. Her influence could be problematic. The reflection was silent for a moment. The explode is a useful tool, but ultimately expendable. If she becomes an obstacle, eliminate her. Hashwolf bowed his head. As you wish, Your Majesty. Remember, the reflection continued, when the time comes, you must ensure he stands before the Soul King's palace. Only there can the final transference occur. And what of Aizen? He grows more influential by the hour. The reflection's face darkened. Aizen plays his own game, as always. Let him believe he manipulates events to his advantage. In the end, his ambitions will serve our purpose. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. The reflection quickly reverted to Hashwolf's own face. Enter, he called. Bambietta strode in without ceremony. There you are. His Majesty wants you in the throne room. Her eyes flicked to the mirror, then back to Hashwolf. What are you doing in here anyway? Admiring yourself? Hashwolf's face remained impassive. Meditating. The invasion has been taxing. Bambietta snorted. Right. Well, hurry up. He seemed pretty urgent about it. As she turned to leave, Hashwolf asked, did His Majesty mention why he needs me? Bambietta hesitated, remembering Naruto's warning about keeping Aizen's information secret. Nope. Probably wants your boring reports or something. Hashwolf studied her for a moment. You're a poor liar, Basterbine. And you're creepy as fuck when you stare like that, she retorted. Just go see him. After she left, Hashwolf turned back to the mirror, which once again showed the other face. She knows something, the reflection observed. Hashwolf nodded. I'll discover what it is. See that you do. Nothing must interfere with our plans. Nothing. In the southern sector of the Siriidii, Renji Abarai stood amid the bodies of fallen Quincy soldiers, his modified Bankai hovering above him like a giant skeletal snake. Beside him stood Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi, his gold teeth gleaming in a satisfied smile. You see? Kuratsuchi crowed. My Bankai modification is a complete success. Their stealing devices cannot interface with the altered spiritual structure. Renji wiped blood from his face. Yeah, it worked. But it feels wrong. Like Zabumaru is pissed at me for changing him. A small price to pay for effectiveness, Kuratsuchi dismissed. Now, shall we proceed to? A wave of heat interrupted him, forcing both Shinigami to flash step away as the ground where they'd been standing melted into slag. Naruto appeared through the rising steam, Zenka no Tachi held casually at his side. A Bankai modification, Naruto observed, studying Renji's weapon with interest. Captain Kuratsuchi's work, I assume. Impressive. Kuratsuchi's painted face stretched into a grin. The Quincy King himself. What an excellent specimen you'll make for my laboratory. I'd be disappointed if you didn't try, Naruto replied pleasantly. But I'm curious, how did you modify the Bankai's spiritual signature so quickly? Even with your genius, developing such technology in mere hours seems implausible. Kuratsuchi's smile faltered slightly. A scientist never reveals his methods. Unless he's bragging, Naruto countered. Which you love to do. No, I think you had this technology ready beforehand. You knew we were coming. Renji raised his Bankai. Enough talk. Hihio Zabumaru. The skeletal snake surged forward, jaws open to devour Naruto. Without even raising his sword, Naruto released a pulse of heat that turned the bones red-hot. Renji cried out as the feedback burned through their connection, forcing him to drop to one knee. Lieutenant Abarai, Naruto said, almost gently. You're outmatched here. This isn't your fight. Every fight against you bastards is my fight, Renji snarled, struggling to his feet. Naruto sighed. Admirable, but foolish. He raised Zenka no Tachi, and the temperature around them rose to unbearable levels. Kuratsuchi, recognizing the danger, grabbed Renji's arm. Strategic retreat, the captain hissed. Now. Before Renji could protest, Kuratsuchi activated a device on his wrist, and both Shinigami vanished in a flash of light. Naruto lowered his sword, frowning thoughtfully. Kuratsuchi's Bankai modification presented an unexpected complication. If the Shinigami could protect their remaining Bankai from theft, the Wandenreika's primary advantage would be significantly reduced. Problems, Your Majesty. Naruto turned to find a skin approaching, his hands in his pockets and his usual lazy smile in place. Kuratsuchi has developed a countermeasure to our Bankai stealing, Naruto replied. Faster than anticipated. A skin shrugged. Was bound to happen eventually. The man's a sadistic freak, but his genius is undeniable. How is our guest? Naruto asked, changing the subject. Aizen. Askin's smile widened. Comfortable in his accommodations. Well, as comfortable as someone can be in a chair with 23 different restraints. He keeps asking to speak with you again. Naruto began walking, a skin falling into step beside him. And what's your assessment of him? Dangerous, a skin replied immediately, his typical casualness giving way to seriousness. Even bound and sealed, his spiritual pressure is unsettling. Like he's only showing us what he wants us to see. That's Aizen's specialty, Naruto agreed. Illusion and manipulation. They walked in silence for a moment before a skin spoke again. The other stern Ritter are asking questions. About why we're keeping him alive. About what he told you. Naruto glanced at his subordinate. And what have you told them? Nothing, a skin assured him. Not my circus, not my monkeys. But Hashwolf has been particularly interested. Hashwolf is always interested in everything I do, Naruto replied drily. It's his job to be my shadow. Skin nodded, but something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Just thought you should know. Walls have ears, especially ice ones. They had reached the perimeter of the ice palace. Naruto stopped, looking out over the partially destroyed Siriidii. Kuratsuchi's countermeasure changes things, he said after a moment. We need to accelerate our plans. Which are? Skin prompted when Naruto didn't elaborate. Naruto turned to him with a calculating look. How much do you know about the Soul King, Skin? The question clearly caught the stern Ritter off guard. Only what everyone knows. Linchpin of reality, sits in a crystal up in the royal palace, keeps the worlds from collapsing into each other. And if I told you there was a way to replace him? To take that power for ourselves? Askin's eyes widened slightly. Is that what Aizen told you? Naruto smiled enigmatically. Keep watch on our prisoner. Let me know if he says anything else of interest. As Naruto walked away, Skin watched him with a troubled expression. Something was changing in their king, something subtle but significant. And in Askin's experience, change was rarely good for those caught in its wake. Bambietta paced the corridor outside the throne room, waiting impatiently for Hashwolf to finish his meeting with Naruto. An hour had passed since she'd delivered the message, and her curiosity was killing her. What was so important that Naruto needed to speak with Hashwolf alone? And why all the secrecy about Aizen and the Soul King? She'd never been good at patience. Or following rules. Or respecting privacy. With a quick glance around to ensure no one was watching, Bambietta pressed her ear against the massive ice door, straining to hear the conversation inside. Fragments scattered across dimensions, Naruto was saying. If Aizen is telling the truth, each contains a portion of the Soul King's original power. And you believe this information is reliable? Hashwolf's voice was skeptical. Aizen is known for his deceptions. Which is why I need verification. The records in the 10th Division archives should contain references to the original separation. Hitsugaya will help us find them. Willingly? Hashwolf asked. Does it matter? Naruto's voice hardened. This is bigger than one Shinigami captain's cooperation. There was a pause before Hashwolf spoke again. Your Majesty, forgive my presumption, but is this truly about restoring Quincy glory? Or has your focus shifted? The temperature in the hallway dropped noticeably. Bambietta could imagine Naruto's cold expression. Choose your next words carefully, Hashwolf. I serve only you and the Wandenrake, Hashwolf replied smoothly. But others may question if seeking these fragments serves our original purpose. We came to destroy Soul Society, not to chase ancient artifacts. The purpose remains the same, Naruto said firmly. But the method evolves. If we can claim the Soul King's power, we won't just defeat Soul Society, we'll remake reality itself. The Quincy would never again face extinction. Bambietta leaned closer, intrigued by this new direction. And what of our armies? Hashwolf asked. The rank and file were promised vengeance, blood for blood. They may not understand this, evolution in strategy. Then they don't need to know yet, Naruto replied. Continue the offensive. Keep pressure on the remaining captains. But I want a team assembled for a different mission. Which team? Bambietta, Skin, and Giselle. I need their particular talents. Bambietta's eyes widened. A special mission with Naruto? Her heart beat faster at the prospect, though the inclusion of Giselle Gowell, Sternritter, Z, the zombie, dampened her enthusiasm somewhat. She and Giselle had a complicated history, to put it mildly. A wise selection, Hashwolf was saying. Though Basterbines, emotional attachment to you could be a liability. Bambietta froze. Emotional attachment? Was her interest in Naruto that obvious? Bambietta's loyalty is beyond question, Naruto responded, a hint of warning in his tone. Loyalty, yes, Hashwolf agreed. But her feelings go beyond loyalty, Your Majesty. Surely you've noticed. Before Naruto could respond, the door swung open suddenly, catching Bambietta still leaning against it. She stumbled forward, nearly falling face first onto the throne room floor. Both men stared at her, Hashwolf with cool disapproval, Naruto with surprise quickly masked by amusement. Bambietta, Naruto said evenly. Eavesdropping isn't very becoming of a stern ritter. She straightened, trying to salvage some dignity. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was, checking the structural integrity of the door. Ice palaces, you know. Very unstable. Of course, Naruto replied, not bothering to hide his disbelief. And what's your assessment of our infrastructure? Solid as a rock, she said, giving Hashwolf a challenging stare. Though there might be some cracks forming in unexpected places. Hashwolf's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. If you'll excuse me, Your Majesty, he said with a bow. I'll begin preparations as we discussed. After Hashwolf departed, Naruto turned to Bambietta, his expression unreadable. How much did you hear? She considered lying, but decided against it. Enough to know you're planning something big involving Soul King fragments, and you want me on your special team. Naruto sighed, running a hand through his spiky blonde hair. I should be angry. But you're not, because deep down you know I'd find out anyway, Bambietta grinned. So, when do we start this treasure hunt? And please tell me I can blow stuff up along the way. Despite himself, Naruto's lips quirked into a small smile. You really are impossible. That's why you keep me around, she replied, her grin widening. I'm unpredictable. Naruto's expression sobered. This mission isn't a game, Bambi. If Aizen's information is correct, we'll be seeking artifacts of immense power, fragments that contain pieces of the original Soul King. And what do these fragments do? Give you godlike powers? Let you shoot rainbows from your fingertips? According to Aizen, when united, they would allow the wielder to replace the Soul King. Entirely, Naruto explained, his voice low. To take his place as the linchpin of reality, but with full consciousness and control, rather than the passive existence the current Soul King endures. Bambietta whistled. That's ambitious, even for you. It's necessary, Naruto insisted. As long as Soul Society controls the flow of souls, the Quincy will never be truly safe. We need to change the fundamental order. She studied him for a moment. You're really serious about this? Dead serious, he confirmed. Which is why I need people I can trust absolutely. People like you. The simple statement sent a rush of warmth through Bambietta that had nothing to do with her explosive powers. She tried to play it cool, shrugging casually. Well, obviously. I'm the best you've got. She paused, then added with a grimace, but Giselle. Really? You know she's completely insane, right? We need her abilities, Naruto replied pragmatically. The dead can access places the living cannot. Bambietta sighed dramatically. Fine. But keep her away from me. Last time we worked together, she tried to turn me into one of her zombies, just to see what would happen. I'll make sure she behaves, Naruto promised. Now, we need to, he stopped abruptly, his head turning toward the window as if hearing something only he could perceive. His eyes widened slightly. What is it? Bambietta asked, tensing. A new spiritual pressure, Naruto said slowly. Powerful. Ancient. And familiar somehow. He moved to the window, looking out over the Siriidii. In the distance, a pillar of dark energy was rising from the central 46 chambers. They've released the final seal, Naruto murmured. They're truly desperate. What final seal? Bambietta joined him at the window. What are we looking at? Naruto's face hardened. Something that changes our timetable considerably. Gather a skin and Giselle. We leave in 1 hour. For where? The Bankai, the precipice world between dimensions. Naruto's eyes reflected the dark energy in the distance. The first fragment isn't in Soul Society at all. It's hidden in the boundary between worlds. Bambietta wanted to ask more questions, but the urgency in Naruto's voice spurred her to action. She turned and hurried from the throne room, her mind racing with possibilities. A mission to collect godlike artifacts with Naruto, away from the main invasion force and Hashwaltha's watchful eyes. Despite the danger, she couldn't help feeling excited. This was her chance to prove herself to Naruto, and perhaps discover if Hashwalth was right about her emotional attachment being noticed. As she left, she didn't see Naruto turn back to the window, his expression troubled as he watched the dark energy continue to rise over Soul Society. So it begins, he whispered to himself. Just as Yawatch foresaw. In the depths of the central 46 chambers, 13 hooded figures stood in a circle around an ancient seal embedded in the floor. The normal judges and wise men of Central 46 had been evacuated, leaving only these 13, the Zero Squad's connection to the Siriidii. We have no choice, said one, his voice grave beneath his hood. The Quincy invasion has progressed too far. The head captain's Bankai has been stolen, agreed another. The balance of power has shifted dramatically. But releasing him, objected a third. The risk is incalculable. As is the risk of doing nothing, countered the first. We must fight fire with fire. With solemn ceremony, each of the 13 placed their hands on the seal. It began to glow, the ancient kanji symbols lighting up one by one. By our authority as representatives of Squad Zero, they chanted in unison, we release the binding on the Nameless One. Let him rise to defend Soul Society in its darkest hour. The seal shattered with a sound like breaking glass, and dark energy erupted from the broken circle. It shot upward, piercing through the ceiling and into the sky above the Siriidii. From the broken seal rose a figure shrouded in darkness, tall, imposing, with eyes that glowed like embers in the gloom. As the darkness dissipated, his features became visible, long black hair, aristocratic features marked with ancient tribal scars, and spiritual pressure so dense it felt like a physical weight. Genjutsu Kurosaki, one of the hooded figures, addressed him with a deep bow. Soul Society faces extinction. We release you from your imprisonment to fulfill your ancient oath. The man called Genjutsu surveyed the kneeling figures with cold disdain. How many centuries has it been? How long have I rotted in your prison while you sat in judgment over souls? 500 years, the spokesman replied. But circumstances are dire. The Quincy have returned, led by one claiming to be Yawatch reborn. At this, Genjutsu's eyes widened slightly. Yawatch? Impossible. I killed him myself. Not killed. Merely defeated, the spokesman corrected. And now his heir leads an army against us. They have stolen Yamamoto's Bankai and breached our defenses. Genjutsu laughed, a sound entirely without humor. So the old man finally met someone he couldn't burn to ash. How fitting. He stretched, spiritual pressure rolling off him in waves that made several of the hooded figures stagger back. And what makes you think I'll help you? My imprisonment was unjust, my sentence a betrayal of everything I fought for. Because the Quincy King seeks the Soul King fragments, the spokesman said quietly. Including the one you guard. This silenced Genjutsu's mocking laughter. His expression turned deadly serious. You're certain? He has already begun moving toward the Bankai. If he obtains the Koryu fragment, he won't, Genjutsu cut in, his resolve instant. Whatever grudge I bear against Soul Society, I will not allow the fragments to be united. The consequences would be unthinkable. He moved toward the exit, his stride purposeful. Where is this self-proclaimed Quincy King now? Our sources indicate he's preparing to enter the Bankai with a small team of elite soldiers. Genjutsu nodded. Then that's where I'll intercept him. He paused at the doorway, looking back at the hooded figures. But make no mistake, I do not do this for you or for Soul Society. I do it for balance. With that, he vanished, leaving the 13 representatives of Squad Zero looking at each other with expressions of uncertainty. Have we made a terrible mistake? One whispered. Perhaps, the spokesman admitted. But what choice did we have? Giselle Goel skipped along the corridor of the Ice Palace, humming tunelessly to herself. Her long black hair bounced with each step, and her perpetual smile gave her an air of childish innocence that belied her true nature. Bambi-chan, she called out in a sing-song voice when she spotted Bambietta approaching. I heard we're going on a special mission together. Just like old times. Bambietta's expression soured. Don't call me that. And this isn't a reunion tour, it's a mission. Professional, got it? Giselle's smile didn't falter. So cold, Bambi-chan. After everything we've been through together. That's exactly why I'm cold, Bambietta retorted. I still have nightmares about what happened in Barcelona. That was an accident. Giselle protested, her smile finally slipping. How was I supposed to know my blood would react that way with the local water supply? The zombie outbreak gave it away, Bambietta said drily. Just, stay focused this time. His Majesty needs us at our best. At the mention of Naruto, Giselle's eyes lit up with understanding. Oh, I get it now. You're worried about impressing your crush. That's so cute. Bambietta's face flushed red. I don't have a crush, you psychotic blood witch. Your face says otherwise, Giselle teased. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone, except maybe Candace. And Menines. And possibly Lil Tato if she bribes me with cake. Bambietta grabbed Giselle by the front of her uniform, pulling her close. Listen carefully. This mission is important. If you screw it up with your usual crazy bullshit, I will personally ensure that every part of you explodes simultaneously. Got it? Giselle's smile turned slightly manic. Promises, promises. She patted Bambietta's cheek condescendingly. But for His Majesty, I'll be on my best behavior. Scout's honor. You were never a scout, Bambietta muttered, releasing her. Details, details. Giselle waved dismissively. So what's the mission anyway? All I heard was something about fragments and dimensions. Bambietta hesitated, then decided Giselle would find out soon enough anyway. We're going to the Bankai to retrieve a fragment of the Soul King's power. Something called the Koryu fragment. Giselle's eyes widened. The Koryu fragment? Are you serious? You know about it? Everyone who's studied Quincy history knows about it, Giselle replied, suddenly serious. It's the reason the Koryu current in the Bankai is so deadly to souls. The fragment corrupts the normal flow of time and space. Bambietta frowned. And Naruto wants us to, what? Grab it and run? It's not that simple, Giselle said, shaking her head. The fragment isn't just sitting there waiting to be picked up. It's infused into the current itself. Extracting it would be. Would be what? Theoretically impossible, came Askin's voice as he rounded the corner. At least according to conventional wisdom. The tall, lanky Sternritter approached them with his usual languid grace. But then, our king has a habit of redefining what's possible, doesn't he? You know about the fragment too? Bambietta asked, surprised. Askin shrugged. I make it my business to know things. Especially dangerous things that might kill me. The Koryu fragment definitely qualifies. So how are we supposed to extract something that's infused into a current that dissolves souls on contact? Bambietta demanded. That, my explosive friend, is the million-can question, Askin replied. I assume His Majesty has a plan. He usually does. His plans typically involve a lot of risk, Giselle pointed out cheerfully. And a lot of things blowing up, Bambietta added with a hint of pride. A skin sighed. Well, at least we'll die in interesting company. The three Sternritter made their way to the palace's eastern gate, where Naruto was waiting for them. He had changed from his standard Wandenrake uniform into a more practical combat outfit, still white with black trim, but reinforced with reishi-woven armor across vital areas. Good, you're all here, he said as they approached. Time is short, so I'll brief you en route. He opened a garganta, a tear in space leading to the void between worlds. Unlike the black void of a normal garganta, this one shimmered with a bluish light. Modified pathway, Naruto explained, seeing their questioning looks. Direct to the Bankai, bypassing normal dimensional barriers. Neat trick, a skin commented. Where'd you learn that one? Yawacha's memories, Naruto replied simply. He knew pathways between worlds that even Soul Society has forgotten. He gestured for them to enter. Bambietta, you're with me at point. A skin, watch our rear. Giselle, stay centered, we may need your abilities if we encounter Koryu Guardians. Guardians? Bambietta questioned. The Koryu has guardians. Naruto's expression grew somber. Everything of value is guarded, Bambi. Especially fragments of a god. With that cryptic statement, he stepped into the garganta. The three Sternritter exchanged glances before following their king into the unknown. As the gateway closed behind them, a shadow detached from a nearby column. Haschwalth stepped into the light, his face impassive as he watched the garganta disappear. So it begins, he murmured, before turning away to find a certain mirror. The Bankai was nothing like Bambietta remembered from their invasion preparations. Where before it had been a relatively straightforward tunnel between dimensions, now it pulsed with ominous energy. The walls oozed a purple-black substance that seemed alive, reaching tendrils toward them before recoiling from Naruto's spiritual pressure. Stay close, Naruto instructed as they moved deeper into the precipice world. The Bankai has changed since the invasion began. The barriers between worlds are thinning. That's reassuring, a skin muttered, eyeing the writhing walls with distaste. Giselle skipped alongside them, apparently unbothered by the eldritch surroundings. It's actually quite pretty if you look at it right, she chirped. Like living art. Your definition of pretty needs serious recalibration, Bambietta told her. Naruto held up a hand, signaling them to stop. We're approaching the Koryu current. From here on, absolute caution is necessary. The passageway ahead glowed with a sickly yellow light. Flowing across their path was what appeared to be a river of viscous, glowing liquid, the Koryu, or resting flow, that could trap souls for eternity or dissolve them entirely. That's where the fragment is? Bambietta asked, eyeing the deadly current skeptically. In that? Not in it, Naruto corrected. It is it. The Koryu itself is a manifestation of the Soul King's fragment, a piece of his power that governs time and boundary. So how exactly do we extract something that's an entire dimensional current? A skin asked. Naruto reached into his uniform and withdrew a small crystal vial. With this, a spirit convergence device I borrowed from Kuratsuchi's laboratory during the initial invasion. You stole from the 12th Division. Bambietta grinned. Ballsy move. Calculated risk, Naruto replied. Kuratsuchi has been studying the Bankai for centuries. This device was designed to contain and analyze Koryu samples without degradation. He handed the vial to Bambietta. I need your precision, Bambi. Use your power to create a controlled explosion at the exact center of the current, not to destroy, but to momentarily disrupt the flow. When it recoils, it will create a vacuum point where the fragment's essence is most concentrated. And that's when you use the vial, she asked. Naruto shook his head. That's when you use the vial. I'll be maintaining a erasure barrier to prevent the disrupted current from lashing out at all of us. Bambietta stared at him. You want me to extract the fragment? Why not you or a skin? He literally deals with lethal doses for a living. Because your spiritual pressure signature is most compatible with the fragment, Naruto explained. According to Yawacha's memories, the explode and the Koryu resonate on similar frequencies. Basically, you both like to wreck things, Giselle simplified with a giggle. Match made in heaven. Bambietta ignored the jab, studying the vial in her hand. And if this goes wrong, then we all cease to exist, Naruto said bluntly. The Koryu would consume us entirely, erasing us from all planes of existence. Great pep talk, a skin drawled. Really boosting team morale there, boss. Despite the gravity of the situation, Bambietta found herself grinning. This was why she followed Naruto. He never sugar-coated the dangers, never treated them like they couldn't handle the truth. And he trusted her with the most critical part of the mission, despite her reputation for chaos and destruction. All right then, she said, pocketing the vial. Let's go fishing for god fragments. Naruto nodded and turned to the others. A skin, establish a perimeter. If anything approaches from behind, neutralize it immediately. Giselle, be ready to use your blood to create a secondary barrier if mine falters. Both Sternritter moved into position without question. Then Naruto turned back to Bambietta, his blue eyes intense. Ready? He asked quietly. She nodded, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach when he placed a hand on her shoulder. I wouldn't entrust this to anyone else, he told her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Your chaotic nature is precisely what's needed here. The fragment will respond to you. Trying to butter me up before I risk my existence, she teased, masking her nervousness. Naruto smiled slightly. Is it working? Maybe, she admitted. Ask me again if we survive. Together, they approached the edge of the Koryu current. Up close, Bambietta could feel its malevolent energy, ancient, powerful, and hungry. It seemed to reach for her, as if sensing her presence. Naruto raised his hands, and a dome of blue-white racier formed around them, extending to cover their approach to the current. Remember, precision is key. Too small an explosion won't disrupt the flow, too large might shatter the boundaries between dimensions entirely. No pressure, Bambietta muttered, but her eyes gleamed with determination. This was her element, controlled chaos, destruction with purpose. She extended her hand toward the Koryu, gathering her power. The explosive energy built within her palm, glowing a deep scarlet that contrasted with the sickly yellow of the current. On my mark, Naruto said, strengthening the barrier as they moved closer. 3, 2, 1. Now. Bambietta released her power, not in her usual violent burst, but in a focused beam that pierced the surface of the Koryu. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the current erupted. The Koryu twisted and churned, yellow light flaring to blinding intensity as it reacted to the foreign energy. Naruto's barrier strained against the backlash, cracks appearing in the racier construct. It's fighting back. Bambietta shouted over the roar of the destabilized current. Keep going. Naruto called back, sweat beading on his forehead as he poured more power into the barrier. Look for the convergence point. As the chaos continued, Bambietta spotted what he meant, a single point where the disrupted current swirled inward rather than outward, creating a small vortex of concentrated energy. Within it glowed something solid, a shard of crystal no larger than her thumbnail, pulsing with power. There, she pointed. Now, Bambietta. Naruto urged. The barrier won't hold much longer. She pulled out the crystal vial and lunged forward, stretching her arm through the barrier and toward the vortex. The Koryu seared her skin where it touched, pain shooting up her arm like liquid fire. Gritting her teeth, she pushed through the agony, extending the vial toward the crystalline shard. Come on, you little bastard, she growled. Work with me here. As if responding to her challenge, the fragment suddenly shot toward the vial. The moment it made contact with the crystal container, a shock wave of power erupted outward. Bambietta was thrown backward, crashing into Naruto and sending them both tumbling away from the current. Naruto's barrier shattered, but the damage was done. The Koryu surged forward, no longer constrained, reaching hungry tendrils toward the fallen Stern Ritter. Bambietta! Giselle shouted, slashing her own wrist. Blood sprayed forth, forming a crimson wall between the Koryu and her comrades. Where the current touched Giselle's blood, it sizzled and recoiled, as if repelled by the necromantic energy. A skin appeared at their side, helping Naruto and Bambietta to their feet. "Time to go, I think," he said urgently. "That blood barrier won't hold long, and the entire Bankai is destabilizing." Bambietta clutched the vial tightly, ignoring the burns covering her right arm. Inside the crystal container, the fragment pulsed with light, like a tiny heartbeat. "I got it," she said, a fierce grin spreading across her face despite the pain. "I fucking got it." Naruto steadied her with an arm around her waist. "You did," he acknowledged, a rare note of pride in his voice. "Now let's get out of here before." A massive spiritual pressure suddenly crashed down upon them, cutting off Naruto's words. It was unlike anything Bambietta had ever felt, ancient, powerful, and undeniably hostile. "What the hell is that?" she gasped, struggling to remain standing under the weight of the pressure. "Something that shouldn't be free," Naruto replied grimly, drawing Zenka no Tachi with his free hand. "Soul Society has released their final safeguard." From the depths of the Bankai emerged a figure wreathed in dark energy. As he approached, his features became clear, long black hair, tribal markings on his face, and eyes that burned with barely contained power. "Quincy King," the newcomer called out, his voice echoing strangely in the unstable dimension. "I believe you have something that doesn't belong to you." Naruto pushed Bambietta behind him, keeping his arm around her to steady her injured form. "Genjutsu Kurosaki," he said, recognition in his voice. "I thought you were sealed away centuries ago." The man called Genjutsu smiled coldly. "Desperate times call for desperate measures. Soul Society would rather release a monster they fear than lose to one they don't understand." "Kurosaki?" Bambietta repeated, confused. "Like the substitute Shinigami?" "An ancestor," Naruto explained quietly. "One of the original noble families, erased from history after the First Quincy War." Genjutsu's eyes fixed on the vial in Bambietta's hand. "The Koryu fragment. Return it, and I might allow you to leave with your lives." "That's not happening," Naruto replied calmly, raising Zenka no Tachi. Flames erupted along the blade, filling the Bankai with scorching heat. "Yamamoto's Bankai," Genjutsu observed, seemingly unimpressed. "So the rumors are true. You stole the old man's favorite toy." "More than stole," Naruto corrected. "Mastered. Without further warning, he swung the blade, sending a wave of heat toward Genjutsu. "North, Tenchi Kaijin." The attack cut through the Bankai like a hot knife through butter, but Genjutsu simply raised a hand. The heat wave split around him, leaving him untouched. "Impressive," he acknowledged. "But Yamamoto and I fought together before your grandfather's grandfather was born. I know all of Zenka no Tachi's secrets." He drew his own Zanpakuto, a blade as black as night with a guard shaped like a crescent moon. "Now let me show you what a real Bankai looks like." Before he could release it, Giselle's blood barrier finally collapsed, allowing the Koryu current to surge forward. Genjutsu leaped back to avoid it, giving Naruto the opening he needed. "A skin. Plan B," he shouted. A skin nodded and threw a vial of his own concoction at the ground. It shattered, releasing a cloud of blue smoke that rapidly expanded to fill the passageway. "What is this?" Genjutsu demanded, his voice muffled by the smoke. "Death-dealing special," a skin replied with a grin. "I've made the lethal dose of your own spiritual pressure effectively zero. The more power you release, the faster you'll succumb." Genjutsu's eyes widened in alarm as his knees buckled. "Clever, but not clever enough." He raised his Zanpakuto despite the debilitating effects of Askin's power. Pierced the heavens and hell, Zangetsu. A blast of pure black energy erupted from his blade, cutting through Askin's poison cloud and nearly taking off the Sternritter's head. Only Naruto's quick reflexes saved him, pulling Askin aside at the last second. "We need to go," Naruto ordered. "Giselle, cover our retreat." Giselle nodded and spread her arms wide, blood flowing from numerous self-inflicted cuts. "Dance of the Dead," she cried, the blood forming into humanoid shapes that lunged toward Genjutsu. The ancient Shinigami cut through them effortlessly, but each destroyed blood construct splashed onto him, slowing his movements as Giselle's zombification power took partial effect. "This way!" Naruto called, supporting the injured Bambietta as he tore open another Garganta. "Quickly!" Askin dashed through first, followed by Giselle. Naruto and Bambietta were about to enter when Genjutsu's spiritual pressure suddenly spiked, breaking through Askin's poison effect. "You won't escape with the fragment," he roared, launching himself toward them with frightening speed. Naruto pushed Bambietta through the Garganta and turned to face Genjutsu alone. "Go. I'll hold him off." "Naruto, don't you dare." Bambietta screamed, but the gateway was already closing between them. The last thing she saw was Naruto facing Genjutsu, Zanka no Tachi blazing in his hand as the two titans clashed in an explosion of black and orange energy. Then the Garganta closed, and she found herself back in the Ice Palace with Askin and Giselle, the fragment clutched in her burned hand and Naruto nowhere to be seen. "No," she whispered, staring at the empty space where the portal had been. "No, no, no." She rounded on Askin, grabbing him by the throat. "Open it back up. Now." "I can't," he choked out. "Only His Majesty can create those modified pathways. We have to wait for him to, he's fighting a fucking ancestor of the Kurosaki bloodline." Bambietta screamed. "We can't just leave him there." "We don't have a choice," Giselle said quietly, her usual playfulness gone. "His Majesty ordered us to secure the fragment. That's what he would want us to do." Bambietta wanted to argue, to scream, to blow the entire palace to smithereens, but she knew they were right. Naruto had made his choice, sacrificing himself to ensure their escape and the safety of the fragment. She looked down at the vial in her hand, the crystal shard inside pulsing with yellow light. Was this really worth Naruto's life? Worth everything they'd fought for? "What do we do now?" she asked hollowly. Askin and Giselle exchanged glances. "We wait," Askin said finally. "His Majesty is the strongest among us. If anyone can defeat Genjutsu Kurosaki and return, it's him." Bambietta nodded mechanically, but inside, fear and doubt gnawed at her. What if he didn't come back? What if she never saw him again? And why did that possibility hurt more than the burns covering her arm? 3 hours later, Bambietta paced the throne room, her injured arm now bandaged but her anxiety undiminished. Askin leaned against a wall, outwardly calm but tension evident in the tightness around his eyes. Giselle sat cross-legged on the floor, idly playing with droplets of her own blood, forming them into tiny animals that danced across the ice. "This is ridiculous," Bambietta burst out, unable to contain herself any longer. "We need to do something." "Like what?" Askin asked reasonably. "Storm the Bankai. None of us can open a pathway there without His Majesty's power." "Then we find someone who can," Bambietta insisted. "Hashwolf, Yawacha's memories, whatever. There has to be a way." Before Askin could respond, a ripping sound cut through the air. All three Sternritter whirled toward the center of the room, where space itself seemed to tear open. A Garganta formed, but unlike the clean edges of Naruto's portals, this one was ragged and unstable, pulsing with erratic energy. From within the distorted gateway stumbled a figure, bloodied, burned, but unmistakably their king. "Naruto!" Bambietta cried, rushing forward to catch him as he collapsed. Blood soaked through his white uniform, and parts of his skin were blackened from what looked like direct contact with the Koryu. Zenka no Tachi was still clutched in his hand, but the blade was cracked in several places. "Fragment," he gasped, his eyes finding Bambietta's. "Safe." She nodded quickly, showing him the vial still securely in her possession. "We got it." "You idiot, why did you stay behind?" A weak smile crossed his face. "Couldn't let him follow." "What happened to Genjutsu?" Askin asked, helping Bambietta lower Naruto onto a makeshift bed of ice Giselle had created. "Sent him back to Soul Society," Naruto managed between labored breaths. "But not before, he told me something." "Save your strength," Bambietta urged, pressing a hand against a particularly bad wound on his chest, trying to stem the bleeding. Naruto shook his head stubbornly. "Need to know, the fragments, they're not just power." "What are they then?" Giselle asked, curiosity overcoming her usual flippancy. "Memories," Naruto whispered. "The Soul King's memories, his consciousness, spread across dimensions." His eyes locked with Bambietta's, intensity burning through the pain. "The fragment will show us where the others are." With that, his eyes rolled back, and he lost consciousness. Panic seized Bambietta's heart. "Askin. Do something," she demanded. The death-dealing Sternritter was already kneeling beside their fallen king, hands hovering over Naruto's wounds. "I need to adjust the lethal dose of his injuries," he muttered, concentration etched on his face. "Giselle, your blood has healing properties for the dead, yes?" Giselle nodded, suddenly serious. "But he's not dead." "No, but he's close enough that it might work," Askin replied grimly. "It's worth trying." Without hesitation, Giselle slashed her palm and let her blood drip onto Naruto's worst wounds. Instead of the usual zombification effect, the blood seemed to be absorbed directly into the injuries, a faint glow emanating from beneath the skin. "It's working," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "But how?" "He's not dead, and he's not a zombie." "Questions for later," Bambietta cut in. "Just keep healing him." As they worked to save Naruto, none of them noticed the fragment in the vial pulsing more rapidly, resonating with the injured Quincy King's spiritual pressure. Nor did they notice the figure watching from the shadows of the doorway, Jugram Hashwolf, his expression unreadable as he observed the scene before silently withdrawing. In a different part of the Ice Palace, Hashwolf stood before the mirror once more. The reflection showed not his face, but that of the older man with tribal markings, Yawacha's true visage. "He has obtained the Koryu fragment," Hashwolf reported. "And survived an encounter with Genjutsu Kurosaki." Yawacha's reflection frowned. "Genjutsu. So Soul Society has grown truly desperate. This accelerates our timetable." "The vessel is severely injured," Hashwolf continued. "But the zombie and the death-dealing are treating him. He will recover." "And the fragment?" "In the Explode's possession, as ordered. She guards it, zealously." Yawacha's eyes narrowed. "Her attachment to the vessel grows problematic. She may interfere when the time comes for the transference." "Shall I eliminate her?" Hashwolf asked. After a moment's consideration, Yawach shook his head. "No. Her power may still be useful, and her death might destabilize the vessel emotionally. Instead, use her attachment. Make her believe the fragments are necessary for his survival." "As you wish," Hashwolf bowed. "And what of Aizen?" "He continues to influence events from his cell." "Let him," Yawach replied dismissively. "His schemes ultimately serve our purpose. The more chaos he creates, the easier our final move becomes." Hashwolf hesitated before asking his next question. "And if the vessel begins to suspect the truth?" "His dreams grow more vivid with each passing day. He asks questions about his past, about you, that I find difficult to answer convincingly." For the first time, concern flickered across Yawacha's face. "Then we must accelerate the collection of fragments." Once we have them all, the vessel's questions become irrelevant. He will be, me. The mirror's surface rippled, and Yhwach's reflection began to fade. Monitor him closely, Hashwolf. The moment he awakens, send him after the next fragment. Time grows short for all of us. As the reflection returned to normal, showing only Hashwolf's troubled face, the Sternritter touched the glass surface thoughtfully. Yes, your majesty, he murmured. Time grows short indeed. Bambietta sat beside Naruto's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. After hours of treatment from a skin and Giselle, his condition had stabilized, though he remained unconscious. The vial containing the Koryu fragment sat on a small table nearby, its yellow light casting eerie shadows across the room. Occasionally, it would pulse more strongly, as if responding to Naruto's presence even in his unconscious state. You look like shit, Bambietta told the sleeping Quincy King. Just so you know. No response, of course. She hadn't expected one. But talking to him made her feel better somehow, less helpless. A skin says you'll recover. Something about adjusting the lethal dose of your injuries to 0. I didn't really understand the technical stuff. She paused, fidgeting with the bandage on her own arm. Giselle helped too, which pains me to admit. Her blood actually healed you instead of turning you into one of her creepy puppets. Even she seemed surprised. The silence stretched on, broken only by Naruto's steady breathing. You scared the hell out of me, Bambietta admitted quietly. Pushing me through that portal like some damsel that needed saving. Dick move, your majesty. Seriously dick move. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Don't do it again, okay? I don't know what I'd do if you didn't come back. The door opened behind her, and Bambietta straightened quickly, wiping at her eyes with her sleeve. Hashwolf entered, his cool gaze taking in the scene. His condition, he asked without preamble. Stable, Bambietta replied, her voice carefully neutral. She'd never fully trusted Naruto's second-in-command, and after overhearing their conversation earlier, her suspicions had only grown. A skin says he should regain consciousness soon. Hashwolf nodded, his eyes moving to the vial containing the fragment. And the Koryu fragment is secure? Obviously, Bambietta said defensively. I haven't let it out of my sight. Good. Hashwolf approached, studying the pulsing light within the crystal container. His Majesty will be pleased when he awakens. Something in Hashwolf's tone set Bambietta on edge. What aren't you telling me? The blonde Sternritter regarded her impassively. I'm not sure what you mean. Cut the crap, Bambietta snapped. You and Naruto were discussing something about the Soul King before I interrupted earlier. Something important. And now he comes back half dead talking about the fragments being memories, not just power. Hashwolf was silent for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. What do you know of Yhwach's relationship with His Majesty? The question caught Bambietta off guard. Only what everyone knows. Yhwach found Naruto when he was a child, recognized his potential as a Quincy, and trained him as his successor. A simplified version of the truth, Hashwolf said, his tone maddeningly calm. The reality is more complicated. Complicated how? Hashwolf turned to look at Naruto's unconscious form. Yhwach didn't just train Naruto. He infused him with a piece of his own soul, a fragment, if you will, similar to the one you just recovered from the Bankai. Bambietta's eyes widened. He's carrying a piece of Yhwach inside him. Like a parasite? More like a blessing, Hashwolf corrected. That fragment is what gives His Majesty his extraordinary power, the Almighty, the ability to see and alter futures. But it came with a cost. What cost? Bambietta demanded, her hand instinctively moving closer to her sword. Yhwach's soul fragment is slowly consuming Naruto's original soul, Hashwolf said bluntly. The process was meant to be gradual, allowing Naruto to serve as Yhwach's successor for centuries before the full transformation took place. Transformation into what? Bambietta asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Into Yawach himself, Hashwolf replied. A perfect vessel, carrying his consciousness and power into a new era. Bambietta felt sick. That's fucked up. Does Naruto know? He suspects, Hashwolf admitted. The dreams, the memories that aren't his own, the inexplicable knowledge of things he never learned, all symptoms of the soul merger progressing. And you're just okay with this? Bambietta demanded, anger rising in her chest. Watching him be erased. Hashwolf's expression remained maddeningly neutral. My loyalty is to the Wandenrake and its king, whoever that may be. You cold-blooded bastard, Bambietta hissed. Naruto trusts you. Which is why I'm telling you this now, Hashwolf replied, surprising her. Because there may be a way to save him. Bambietta's anger faltered, replaced by cautious hope. What way? The Soul King fragments. Hashwolf gestured to the vial on the table. They contain not just power, but consciousness, pieces of the original god that created the realms. If collected and used properly, they might be able to overwrite Yawach's soul fragment without killing Naruto in the process. Might? Bambietta repeated skeptically. It's theoretical, Hashwolf acknowledged. But it's the only option I've found in years of research. The alternative is to watch him slowly disappear as Yawach takes complete control. Bambietta looked back at Naruto's unconscious form, conflict raging within her. Was Hashwolf telling the truth? Or was this some elaborate manipulation? Why tell me this? She asked finally. Why not tell Naruto directly? Because he might choose to sacrifice himself rather than risk using the fragments, Hashwolf said. His loyalty to the Quincy cause is absolute. He would willingly become Yawach if he believed it would save our people. That, at least, rang true. Naruto had always put the Wandenrake's goals above his own well-being. And what do you want from me? Bambietta asked, suspicion still evident in her voice. Help him collect the fragments, Hashwolf said simply. And when the time comes to use them, ensure he uses them to save himself, not to resurrect Yawach fully. Before Bambietta could respond, Naruto stirred on the bed. Both Sternritter immediately turned their attention to him as his eyes fluttered open. Bambi? Hashwolf, he murmured, his voice raspy from disuse. Here, Bambietta said quickly, moving to his side. Don't try to move too much. You took a beating in there. Naruto's eyes focused slowly, taking in his surroundings. The fragment? Safe, she assured him, pointing to the vial. Right where you can see it. Relief washed over his face. Good. That's good. Hashwolf stepped forward. Your Majesty, how much do you remember of your encounter with Genjutsu Kurosaki? Naruto's expression darkened. Enough. He's powerful, more powerful than I anticipated. And he knows about the fragments, about what we're trying to do. Did he tell you where the next fragment is located? Hashwolf pressed. Naruto nodded weakly. Hueco Mundo. The Hollow Realm. The next fragment is embedded in the throne of Las Noches. Bambietta and Hashwolf exchanged glances. Las Noches, the former palace of Aizen during his rebellion, now a contested territory among the remaining Arrancar factions. That complicates matters, Hashwolf observed. The Arrancar are not likely to welcome Quincy into their midst, especially after our previous interactions with them. We'll find a way, Naruto said, struggling to sit up. Bambietta immediately moved to help him, supporting his back as he winced in pain. You need to rest, she insisted. Hueco Mundo isn't going anywhere. Time is not on our side, Naruto countered. Genjutsu will report back to Soul Society. They'll redouble their efforts to stop us from collecting the fragments. Let them try, Bambietta said fiercely. We got the first one. We'll get the rest. Naruto looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since waking. His gaze fell on her bandaged arm. You were injured. It's nothing, she dismissed. Burns from the Koryu. Already healing. His expression softened. You did well, Bambietta. Better than I could have hoped. The simple praise warmed her more than it should have. She tried to play it cool, shrugging casually. Yeah, well, someone had to save the day while you were busy playing hero. A small smile touched Naruto's lips before he turned serious again, looking to Haschwalth. What's the status of our forces in Soul Society? Maintaining control of key strategic points, Haschwalth reported. The Shinigami counterattack has been contained, though their modified Bankai pose a continuing challenge. Captain Kuratsuchi's technology has spread to approximately 30% of the remaining Bankai users. And Aizen? Still in our custody. Still asking to speak with you. Naruto nodded thoughtfully. Bring him to me once I've recovered some strength. His knowledge of Hueco Mundo and Las Noches could be valuable. Haschwalth bowed slightly. As you wish, Your Majesty. He departed, leaving Bambietta alone with Naruto once more. As soon as the door closed, Naruto's composed facade crumbled, and he leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion evident on his face. You don't have to pretend with me, you know, Bambietta said softly. I know you're hurting. Naruto closed his eyes briefly. Kings don't have the luxury of showing weakness. Good thing it's just us then, she replied. No subjects here. Just me. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Just you, he agreed quietly. My most loyal, most unpredictable Sternritter. Damn right, she said, trying to keep her tone light despite the heaviness in her chest. Someone has to keep you on your toes. Naruto's gaze drifted to the fragment on the table. Did you experience anything when you held it? Any visions or sensations? Bambietta hesitated, then nodded. Something, yeah. When it first entered the vial, I saw flashes. Images I didn't understand. A great being torn apart. Pieces of him scattered across different worlds. The original sin, Naruto murmured. The dismemberment of the Soul King by the first Shinigami. You saw it too? Not through the fragment, he admitted. Through Yawacha's memories. He was there when it happened, tried to stop it but failed. Bambietta studied him carefully, Haschwalth's words echoing in her mind. Was Naruto already aware of his gradual transformation into Yawach? And if so, what did that mean for his plans with the fragments? Naruto, she began, deciding to take a risk. What happens when we collect all the fragments? What do you intend to do with them? He was silent for a long moment, his blue eyes troubled. Restore balance, he said finally. The current Soul King is a prisoner, a mere tool used by Soul Society to maintain their control over the flow of souls. With the fragments, we could create something better. A conscious being who could ensure true balance between all spiritual realms. And who would that being be? Bambietta pressed. You. Naruto looked away. I don't know yet. Perhaps. She could tell he wasn't being entirely truthful, but decided not to push further. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, surprising both of them with the gesture. Whatever you decide, she said firmly, I'm with you. But don't you dare sacrifice yourself again like you did in the Bankai. We're in this together, got it? Naruto looked at their joined hands, then back at her face. Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a vulnerability she'd never seen before. Got it, he agreed quietly. Together. For now, that was enough. Bambietta squeezed his hand once before releasing it, standing up from her chair. Get some rest, she ordered. You'll need your strength for our next fragment hunt. As she turned to leave, Naruto called after her, Bambietta. She paused at the door. Yeah. Thank you, he said simply. For being there. For being you. A smile tugged at her lips. Someone has to keep you alive long enough to reshape reality. Might as well be me. With that, she left, closing the door softly behind her. In the corridor, she leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Hashwaltha's revelations, Naruto's condition, the fragment's purpose, it was all becoming more complex and dangerous by the hour. And somewhere in the midst of it all, her feelings for Naruto had evolved from simple loyalty to something deeper, more terrifying. Get it together, Basterbine, she muttered to herself. Save the king first, sort out your feelings later. With newfound resolve, she pushed off the wall and headed toward her quarters. There was planning to do, preparations to make. Las Noches awaited, and with it, the next step in their journey to reshape reality itself. Deep in the dungeons of the Ice Palace, Sosuke Aizen sat in his restraints, eyes closed in apparent meditation. But behind his calm exterior, his mind worked furiously, processing every scrap of information he'd gleaned during his captivity. The Quincy had obtained the first fragment. The vessel, this Naruto, had survived an encounter with Genjutsu Kurosaki. And now they set their sights on Las Noches, on the throne he had once occupied. Everything was proceeding according to plan. A smile curved Aizen's lips as he opened his eyes. Interesting times ahead, he murmured to himself. Very interesting indeed. In the shadows of his cell, something shifted, a ripple in reality itself, responding to his will despite the numerous restraints binding him. Soul Society had failed to understand the true extent of his fusion with the Hogyoku, just as the Quincy failed to understand the true nature of the fragments they sought. But Aizen understood. Oh yes, he understood perfectly. And when the time came, when all the pieces were in position, reality itself would bend to his will. He just needed to be patient a little longer. Chapter 3, Broken Crowns. The black sands of Hueco Mundo stretched to the horizon, an endless desert beneath an eternal night. 3 figures moved swiftly across the dunes, white uniforms stark against the darkness. At their center, Naruto led the way, his spiritual pressure carefully suppressed to avoid attracting the attention of nearby hollows. Bambietta followed close behind, with a skin bringing up the rear. Remind me again why we didn't bring more backup? Bambietta asked, eyeing the bone-white trees that dotted the landscape with suspicion. Because subtlety works better than force here, Naruto replied without slowing his pace. Las Noches is a powder keg of competing Arrancar factions. The moment they sense a Quincy invasion, they'll unite against us. And 3 is somehow less suspicious than 30, she countered. A skin chuckled. Quality over quantity, Bambietta dear. Besides, His Majesty's plan requires precision, not brute force. Naruto stopped abruptly, raising a hand for silence. In the distance, the massive dome of Las Noches had appeared on the horizon, a structure so large it seemed to distort perspective itself. We're being watched, he said quietly. As if on cue, the sand around them erupted, revealing a dozen Arrancar armed with various weapons. Their hollow masks were partially broken, revealing humanoid faces with predatory expressions. Quincy, one of them spat, a tall female with a snake-like lower body. You've got nerve coming here after what your kind did to our realm. Naruto stepped forward, keeping his hands visible and away from any weapons. We seek audience with your king, not conflict. The snake Arrancar laughed harshly. King? There hasn't been a king of Hueco Mundo since Aizen's defeat. Just warlords fighting over scraps. Then we wish to speak with whoever controls Las Noches, Naruto clarified, his tone remaining diplomatic despite the hostile reception. The Arrancar exchanged glances before their apparent leader spoke again. That would be Lady Haribel. And she has no love for Quincy. Tell her we bring information about Sosuke Aizen that will interest her greatly, Naruto said. And a proposal that could benefit Hueco Mundo. At Aizen's name, the Arrancar tensed visibly. After a moment of silent communication, the leader nodded reluctantly. You'll be blindfolded and bound, she declared. Any resistance, any attempt to use your powers, and we'll tear you apart. Understood? Perfectly, Naruto agreed, even as Bambietta bristled beside him. Are you serious? She hissed. We're just going to let them. Yes, Naruto cut her off firmly. We are. Bambietta looked like she wanted to argue further, but the look in Naruto's eyes silenced her. Askin merely shrugged, seemingly unbothered by the prospect of being taken prisoner. Fine, Bambietta muttered. But if this goes sideways, I'm blowing up everything in sight. The errand car approached with spiritual pressure suppressing cuffs and blindfolds. As they secured the bindings, the leader leaned close to Naruto. For your sake, Quincy, I hope Lady Harabel finds your information valuable. Otherwise, your deaths will be anything but quick. Back in the ice palace within the Siriidii, Jugram Hashwalth stood before the mirror in his private chambers. The reflection showed Yhwach's stern visage, clearly displeased. He goes to Las Noches with only 2 Sternritter. Yhwach demanded. This is reckless. The throne fragment is critical to our plans. His Majesty believes stealth offers the best chance of success, Hashwalth explained. And both the Explode and the Death-Dealing possess abilities well suited to the mission. And what of Aizen? Has the prisoner revealed anything more about the fragments? Hashwalth hesitated. He continues to hint at deeper knowledge, but offers little concrete information. However, he seems unusually confident for one in his position. Yhwach's expression darkened. Aizen always plays the long game. Have his restraints been checked regularly? Every 4 hours, as ordered, Hashwalth confirmed. Though I must report that his spiritual pressure fluctuates in patterns that defy explanation. It's almost as if a tremendous explosion rocked the palace, cutting off Hashwalth's words. The mirror cracked from the force, distorting Yhwach's image. What was that? The reflection demanded. An attack, Hashwalth replied, already moving toward the door. Soul Society must have launched a counteroffensive. Go, Yhwach ordered through the fractured glass. Secure the Koryu fragment at all costs. Everything else is secondary. Hashwalth nodded and hurried from the chamber. In the corridor outside, chaos reigned. Quincy soldiers ran in all directions, some shouting about a breach in the eastern wing. The air tasted of smoke and spiritual energy. As Hashwalth rushed toward the vault where they had stored the Koryu fragment, another explosion shook the palace. This one was closer, and distinctly different in spiritual signature from typical Shinigami attacks. Hollow energy? Hashwalth muttered in confusion. How could hollows penetrate our understanding dawned as a third explosion ripped through the nearest wall. This wasn't a coordinated attack from Soul Society. This was something else entirely. In the dungeons beneath the Ice Palace, alarms blared as emergency lights bathed the corridor in pulsing red. Guards rushed past Aizen's cell, heading toward the source of the disturbance above. Alone in his restraints, Aizen smiled. Right on time, he murmured. The air in front of him rippled, forming a garganta that tore through reality itself. From the black void stepped a figure in white, an errand car with a broken helmet-like mask and piercing green eyes. Ulquiorra, Aizen greeted, as if the appearance of a supposedly dead Espada was entirely expected. I trust the diversion is proceeding as planned. Yes, Lord Aizen, Ulquiorra replied emotionlessly. The palace is under attack from 3 directions. The Quincy forces are scattered and disorganized. Excellent. Aizen leaned forward in his restraints. Now, if you would be so kind. Ulquiorra extended a pale finger, a beam of green energy forming at its tip. With surgical precision, he cut through Aizen's restraints one by one. As the final binding fell away, Aizen stood, stretching his arms with evident pleasure. The modifications performed by Captain Kuratsuchi were quite ingenious, he commented, examining the shattered restraints. They might have held a lesser being indefinitely. The others await your command, Ulquiorra stated, showing no reaction to Aizen's casual dismissal of Soul Society's most advanced containment technology. Then let's not keep them waiting. Aizen stepped into the Garganta, pausing to look back at the cell that had held him. A shame the Quincy King isn't here to witness this. I would have enjoyed seeing his expression. As Ulquiorra followed him into the void, Aizen added, set course for Las Noches. Our next move requires a certain throne. The Garganta closed behind them, leaving nothing but empty restraints and shattered monitoring equipment as evidence of what had transpired. In Las Noches, Naruto, Bambietta, and Eskin were led through seemingly endless white corridors. Their blindfolds had been removed upon entering the palace, but the spiritual pressure-suppressing cuffs remained firmly in place. Arrancar guards surrounded them, weapons ready at the slightest provocation. Bambietta leaned closer to Naruto as they walked. I still think this plan sucks, she whispered. We're walking into the lion's den with our hands tied. Trust me, Naruto whispered back. Everything is proceeding as anticipated. That's what worries me, she muttered. Their escort stopped before a massive double door emblazoned with the number 3. The snake Arrancar knocked once before the doors swung open, revealing a vast throne room. At its center sat a dark-skinned woman with blonde hair, her face partially concealed by her hollow mask fragment. 3 other Arrancars stood behind her throne, her fraction, loyal to the end. Tyr Haribel, Naruto identified, bowing his head slightly in acknowledgement. 3rd Espada under Aizen's reign, now ruler of Las Noches. Haribel's cold gaze assessed them. Quincy. You've brought war to Soul Society yet seek peaceful audience with me. Explain this contradiction. Our quarrel is with Soul Society, not Hueco Mundo, Naruto replied. In fact, I believe we share common interests. The only interest Hollows share with Quincy is mutual destruction, Haribel countered. Your arrows destroy our very essence, while we devour souls you claim to protect. There is no common ground. Yet we both suffered under Soul Society's dominion, Naruto pressed. Both relegated to the margins of existence, deemed lesser beings by Shinigami authority. Haribel leaned forward slightly. You mentioned information about Aizen. Speak of that or lose your head. Naruto nodded. Sosuke Aizen is our prisoner. We captured him during our invasion of Soul Society. This news clearly surprised Haribel, though she controlled her reaction well. Impossible. Aizen was sentenced to 20,000 years in Muken, Soul Society's deepest prison. Soul Society released him to fight against us, Naruto explained. A desperate measure that backfired when we captured him instead. And you expect me to care about Aizen's fate? Haribel's tone was icy. He used us, betrayed us, left us to die when we no longer served his purpose. Which is precisely why I thought you'd want to know he's planning his return, Naruto said. And that his plans once again involve Las Noches, specifically, your throne. Haribel's spiritual pressure spiked dangerously, causing the guards to tense. Explain yourself, Quincy. The throne of Las Noches contains something Aizen covets, a fragment of the original Soul King's power. Naruto nodded toward the white seat Haribel occupied. He built his palace around it intentionally, drawing power from it during his time here. This is absurd, one of Haribel's fraction interjected. The throne is just a throne. We would have sensed any unusual power. Not necessarily, Eskin spoke up for the first time. The fragment's power signature would be disguised, integrated into the spiritual fabric of Las Noches itself. It's designed to be undetectable except to those who know exactly what to look for. Haribel's eyes narrowed. And you know what to look for. We do, Naruto confirmed. We've already secured one such fragment from the Bankai. We know their signature, their resonance patterns. So you've come to take this fragment, Haribel concluded, anger evident in her voice. You speak of Aizen's betrayal while plotting your own theft. I've come to propose an alliance, Naruto corrected. The fragment is of no use to you, but its presence here puts all of Hueco Mundo at risk. Aizen will come for it, if he hasn't already escaped Soul Society to do so. A tense silence fell over the throne room as Haribel considered his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice measured. "Release them," she ordered, surprising everyone present. As the guards hesitated, she added sharply, "Now." Once the spiritual pressure-suppressing cuffs were removed, Naruto rolled his shoulders, his Ryatsu slowly returning to normal levels. "Thank you," he said, genuine appreciation in his tone. Haribel stood from her throne. "I haven't agreed to your alliance. But I will allow you to examine the throne under supervision. If what you say proves true, we will discuss terms." "That's all I ask," Naruto replied with a respectful nod. Bambietta shot him a skeptical look but remained silent as Haribel led them toward the throne. Up close, the seat appeared to be carved from a single piece of white stone, the same material that comprised most of Las Noches. "May I?" Naruto asked, gesturing toward the throne. Haribel nodded reluctantly. Naruto placed his palm against the white surface, closing his eyes in concentration. His spiritual pressure shifted subtly as he channeled his senses into the material. "There," he murmured after a moment. "Hidden within the structure itself. Ingenious concealment." He opened his eyes, which now displayed the concentric pattern of the Almighty. The fragment is embedded in the base of the throne, encased in a ratio lattice that disperses its energy throughout Las Noches. That's why the palace has its own atmosphere, its own rules of physics. The fragment bends reality around it. "Can you extract it without destroying the palace?" Haribel asked, surprising Bambietta with her apparent acceptance of Naruto's claim. "Yes, but it will change Las Noches," Naruto warned. "The artificial daylight, the accelerated healing within these walls, those effects will diminish or vanish entirely once the fragment is removed." Haribel considered this. A small price to pay for security. If Aizen truly desires this fragment, leaving it here endangers everyone in Hueco Mundo. "Then we have a deal." Naruto pressed. Before Haribel could respond, a tremendous spiritual pressure descended upon Las Noches. The very air seemed to thicken, making it difficult to breathe. Arrancar throughout the throne room dropped to their knees, while Bambietta and Eskin visibly struggled against the oppressive force. Only Naruto and Haribel remained standing, though both showed signs of strain. "This spiritual pressure," Haribel whispered, her eyes wide with recognition. "It can't be." "Aizen," Naruto confirmed grimly. "And he's not alone." The ceiling of the throne room suddenly exploded inward, showering them with debris. Through the gaping hole descended 7 figures, Arrancar in white uniforms, each bearing a distinct fragment of a hollow mask. At their center floated Sosuke Aizen, smiling benevolently down at the assembled group. "Forgive my dramatic entrance," Aizen said pleasantly. "But I thought a reunion deserved a certain flair." "How the fuck is he here?" Bambietta demanded, drawing her sword. "He was locked up in our dungeon." "Was he?" Naruto murmured, his eyes narrowing as he studied Aizen. "Or was that merely what he wanted us to think?" Aizen's smile widened. "Perceptive as always, Quincy King. The me you captured was indeed me, but not all of me. A projection, crafted through my complete fusion with the Hogyoku." "Impossible," Eskin breathed. Even with the Hogyoku's power, no one could maintain such a complex illusion across dimensions. "Impossible?" Aizen echoed, amusement evident in his voice. "I transcended the boundaries between Shinigami and Hollow years ago. Did you really think Soul Society's prison could contain me indefinitely?" He descended to the floor, his Arrancar followers landing around him in defensive formation. Bambietta recognized some of them, Espada who had supposedly died during the Winter War. Ulquiorra, Neutra, Grimjow, and others whose names she didn't know. "The throne fragment, if you please," Aizen said, extending his hand toward Haribel. "I've come to reclaim what is rightfully mine." "Nothing here belongs to you," Harabel replied coldly, drawing her zanpakuto. You lost any claim to lost no chase when you abandoned us to die. Yet here you are, alive and well, Aizen observed. Thanks to my preparations. Who do you think arranged for your survival, Harabel? Who ensured the Wandenrake didn't completely annihilate the Arrancar during their purge of Hueco Mundo? Uncertainty flickered across Harabel's face. Naruto stepped forward, placing himself between her and Aizen. Enough mind games, Aizen, he said firmly. You're after the Soul King fragments, just as we are. The difference is what we intend to do with them. And what do you intend, Naruto Uzumaki? Aizen asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. Or should I address Yhwach instead? I wonder how much of the original Quincy King's consciousness has already overwritten your own. Naruto stiffened, and Bambietta saw a flash of uncertainty cross his face. The reaction was brief but telling. Aizen's words had struck a nerve. I'm not Yhwach, Naruto stated firmly. I carry his power, his memories, but I am my own person. For now, perhaps, Aizen agreed mildly. But we both know the soul fragment he placed within you is designed to gradually consume your original consciousness. It's only a matter of time before Naruto Uzumaki exists only as a fading memory within Yhwach's reborn mind. Bambietta glanced at Naruto, searching his face for denial of Aizen's claims. When none came, her heart sank. Hashwolf had been telling the truth after all. That's why you seek the Soul King fragments, isn't it? Aizen continued, circling them slowly. Not just for power, but for salvation. You believe they might allow you to overwrite Yhwach's soul fragment before it completely consumes you. While you seek them to replace the Soul King yourself, Naruto countered, regaining his composure. To sit upon the throne of heaven and reshape reality according to your whims. Aizen smiled. Our goals may differ in details, but the broader strokes align remarkably well. We both seek to overthrow the current order. We both recognize the fundamental flaws in Soul Society's governance of the realms. He stopped directly in front of Naruto. Which is why I propose a partnership rather than conflict. Together, we could obtain all the fragments far more efficiently than as adversaries. You can't be serious, Bambietta blurted out. After everything he's done, you're not actually considering working with him, are you? Naruto didn't answer immediately, his expression thoughtful as he regarded Aizen. Your proposal is logical, he admitted finally. But fundamentally flawed. You've proven repeatedly that you cannot be trusted as an ally. You betray everyone who serves your purpose once their utility ends. Aizen sighed, as if disappointed by a promising student's failure. Then we must proceed the difficult way. He turned to his Arrancar followers. Secure the throne. Kill anyone who interferes. Chaos erupted in an instant. The restored Espada launched themselves at Naruto's group while Aizen hung back, observing the battle with detached interest. Ulquiorra engaged Naruto directly, his pale hand transforming into a lance of green energy that nearly skewered the Quincy King. Naruto dodged with millimeters to spare, drawing Zanka no Tachi in response. Your Bankai theft won't work on an Arrancar's resurrection, Ulquiorra stated flatly as they exchanged blows at blinding speed. I don't need to steal what I can simply destroy, Naruto replied, flames erupting along his blade. North, Tenchi Kaijin. A slash of pure heat shot toward Ulquiorra, who countered with his own Ciro Oscuras. The collision of energies created a shockwave that blew out the remaining walls of the throne room, exposing the eternal night sky of Hueco Mundo. Across the battlefield, Bambietta found herself facing Grimmjow, the feline Espada grinning maniacally as he circled her. A little Quincy girl, he taunted. This'll be fun. Fun. Bambietta repeated, her own smile turning predatory. Let me show you my idea of fun. She touched a fallen piece of debris, infusing it with her explosive power before hurling it at Grimmjow. The Espada batted it aside contemptuously, only for it to detonate inches from his face, sending him flying backward. Boom, Bambietta whispered, already moving to place her hands on more objects around the battlefield. Each touch left behind her spiritual signature, turning mundane items into deadly bombs. A skin, meanwhile, found himself cornered by Neutra and another espada he didn't recognize. The lanky Sternritter sighed dramatically. 2-on-1. Hardly sporting, he complained, dodging Neutra's massive scythe-like weapon by mere inches. Who said anything about sporting? Neutra cackled. We're here to kill you, not play fair. Disappointing but predictable, a skin replied, flicking his wrist to release a spray of small pills into the air. Death-dealing special mixture 9. The pills burst into clouds of blue mist that surrounded the espada. Neutra laughed, slashing through the cloud with his weapon. Poison. Against Arankar? You're dumber than you look. It's not poison, a skin corrected, watching as both espadas suddenly staggered. It's a lethal dose adjuster. I've just made your own spiritual pressure toxic to your bodies. The stronger you make your Ryatsu, the faster you'll die. Neutra's eyes widened in shock as he dropped to one knee, blood beginning to seep from his eyes and nose. What the hell? Science, a skin replied with a shrug. Nasty business. Across the throne room, Haribel engaged directly with Aizen, her water-based attacks crashing against his seemingly impenetrable defenses. Despite the fury of her assault, Aizen remained untouched, deflecting her strikes with casual ease. Your power has grown, Haribel, Aizen acknowledged. But not nearly enough. With a gesture, he sent her crashing through the floor, disappearing into the levels below. Her fraction cried out and moved to follow, only to be cut down by Okuyura's casual backhanded strike as he continued his battle with Naruto. Seeing Haribel fall, Naruto's expression hardened. He released a surge of spiritual pressure that pushed Okuyura back momentarily. Bambietta. A skin. The throne, he shouted over the chaos. Secure the fragment. I'll hold them off. Bambietta disengaged from her battle with Grimmjow, blasting the espada backward with a particularly large explosion. She raced toward the throne, where a skin was already examining the base structure. Any idea how to extract this thing? She demanded, keeping one eye on the battles raging around them. Working on it, a skin replied, his hands moving across the white stone. There's a erasure lock mechanism, complex, but not impossible to bypass. Work faster, Bambietta urged, turning to face 3 approaching Arankar. We've got company. She raised her hands, charging them with explosive energy. Come on then, boys. Let's dance. Meanwhile, Naruto found himself fighting both Okuyura and a newly recovered Grimmjow simultaneously. Even with Zenka no Tachi's power, the coordinated attacks of 2 espada-level opponents tested his limits. Your friends won't succeed, Okuyura stated as his lance clashed with Naruto's burning blade. Lord Aizen has prepared for every contingency. Has he prepared for this? Naruto countered, his eyes shifting to reveal the Almighty's pattern. East, Kyokujitsujin. Zenka no Tachi's flames concentrated into a single point at the tip of the blade, then expanded outward in a sphere of devastating heat. Both espada were forced to retreat as the temperature in the immediate vicinity rose to levels that threatened to vaporize them where they stood. Using the momentary reprieve, Naruto flash-stepped toward the throne, arriving just as a skin managed to disengage the erasure lock. Got it. A skin announced triumphantly, a panel in the throne's base sliding open to reveal a glowing crystal shard embedded in a complex matrix of energy. Stand back, Naruto ordered, placing his hand near the fragment. This will require precise control. Before he could proceed, a hand clamped onto his shoulder from behind. Naruto turned to find Aizen standing there, smiling serenely. I'm afraid I can't let you take this one, Aizen said pleasantly, his spiritual pressure intensifying to crushing levels. You already have the Koryu fragment. This one belongs to me. It belongs to no one, Naruto replied, trying to break free of Aizen's grip but finding it impossibly strong. These fragments are pieces of a being that should never have been dismembered in the first place. On that, we agree, Aizen said. Which makes your attempt to collect them for yourself somewhat hypocritical, doesn't it? Before Naruto could respond, a massive explosion rocked the base of the throne. Bambietta stood there, her hand pressed directly against the erasure matrix surrounding the fragment. Bambi, don't! Naruto shouted, but it was too late. The explosion tore through the complex energy pattern, shattering the containment field around the fragment. The entire throne cracked and began to crumble, Las Noches itself trembling as the power that had sustained it for centuries was suddenly disrupted. The crystal shard shot upward, momentarily suspended in midair as all combatants froze, watching its trajectory. Then, impossibly fast, it zipped directly toward Bambietta, who instinctively caught it in her outstretched hand. The moment her fingers closed around the fragment, Bambietta gasped as energy surged through her body. Her eyes glowed with an unearthly light, her spiritual pressure skyrocketing beyond anything she had ever manifested before. Bambietta! Naruto called out, breaking free from Aizen's suddenly slackened grip and rushing to her side. Are you alright? I don't know, she managed, staring at the fragment now seemingly fused to her palm. It's like it recognized me. Aizen's expression shifted from surprise to calculating interest. Fascinating. The fragment chose a host rather than remaining inert. This changes matters considerably. All around them, Las Noches continued to destabilize. The artificial sky above shattered like glass, revealing the true night of Hueco Mundo. Walls cracked and floors buckled as the power that had maintained the palace's integrity for centuries unraveled. This place is coming down, a skin warned, dodging falling debris. We need to leave, now. Naruto nodded, supporting Bambietta as she struggled to control the fragment's power coursing through her. Open a garganta back to the ice palace, he instructed a skin. That won't be necessary, came a new voice from behind them. They turned to find the garganta already open, with Hashwolf standing in the gateway. His expression was grave as he surveyed the chaotic scene. Hashwolf? Naruto questioned. What are you doing here? Soul Society attacked the Ice Palace, Hashwolf reported. Aizen escaped, or rather, his projection did. Simultaneously, a force of Arankar breached our defenses from multiple directions. His gaze shifted to Aizen, who merely smiled at the accusation. I suspected as much when I felt the disruption in our connection. You orchestrated this entire scenario. A necessary complexity, Aizen admitted without shame. While you focused on my escape, my Arankar secured what I truly sought. Naruto's eyes widened. The Koryu fragment. You were after our fragment all along. Indeed. Aizen gestured, and Ulquiorra appeared beside him, holding a familiar crystal vial, the container that had held the Koryu fragment. A simple misdirection. You believed I wanted this throne fragment, when in reality, I already possessed the knowledge to extract it any time. What I needed was the fragment you had already secured. You son of a bitch, Bambietta snarled, still struggling with the power surging through her body. This was all just a game to you. Not a game, Aizen corrected. A carefully orchestrated movement in a much larger symphony. One that has been playing for far longer than you realize. The floor between them finally gave way entirely, opening into a yawning chasm. Aizen and his espada floated above the destruction, untroubled by the palace's collapse. This round goes to me, Quincy King, Aizen called across the divide. But the contest is far from over. We will meet again when the remaining fragments are in play. With that, Aizen and his followers disappeared into their own garganta, taking the Koryu fragment with them. Naruto stared after them, frustration evident on his face. Hashwolf, we need to go. Now. The blonde Sternritter nodded, holding the garganta open as Naruto carried the still struggling Bambietta through. A skin followed quickly, just as the remains of the throne room collapsed entirely behind them. Back in the Ice Palace, the signs of battle were everywhere. Walls had been breached, corridors lay in ruins, and wounded Quincy were being treated throughout the fortress. Bambietta, now somewhat recovered, walked beside Naruto as they surveyed the damage. "We traded fragments," she said, holding up her hand where the throne shard remained partially embedded in her palm. "Lost one, gained one. A Pyrrhic victory at best," Naruto replied grimly. "Aizen now has the Koryu fragment, which controls boundaries between worlds. With it, he can access places we can't reach. At least we have this one," Bambietta countered, flexing her fingers experimentally. The fragment pulsed in response, sending small waves of energy up her arm. "Though I still don't understand why it bonded to me." "I have a theory about that," Naruto said, guiding her toward a quieter corridor away from the bustle of reconstruction. "The throne fragment represents space, the ability to create domains and manipulate physical reality. Your explode ability resonates with it on a fundamental level." "So what, now I can create pocket dimensions or something?" "Perhaps," Naruto acknowledged. "But more importantly, it means the other fragments may seek similar resonance with hosts. Which complicates both our plans and Aizen's." They reached Naruto's private quarters, which had remarkably survived the attack intact. Once inside, Naruto's composed facade cracked slightly, revealing the exhaustion beneath. "We underestimated him," he admitted, sinking into a chair. "Even knowing Aizen's reputation for manipulation, we fell into his trap completely." Bambietta leaned against the wall, studying him. "So what now?" "Soul Society's a mess, we've lost the Koryu fragment, and apparently you're slowly turning into Yhwach. Not exactly the victory tour we planned." Naruto looked up sharply. "How long have you known about Yhwach's soul fragment?" "Long enough," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Hashwolf told me while you were unconscious after the Danga mission. Said the fragments might be your only chance to stop the transformation." Naruto sighed, running a hand through his blonde hair. "He's right. Yhwach placed a piece of his soul within me when I was a child. It's what gives me the Almighty, what connects me to his memories and power. But it's also gradually overriding who I am." "And you didn't think this was worth mentioning?" Bambietta demanded, anger flaring in her voice. "Not even to me. I didn't want to burden anyone with bullshit," she cut him off. "You didn't trust us, trust me, enough to tell the truth. And now Aizen's using it against you, making everyone wonder if you're really you or just Yhwach waiting to happen." Naruto stood, crossing to where she stood. "I'm still me, Bambi. Whatever Yhwach intended, whatever's happening to my soul, I'm fighting it every day." "For how long?" she pressed, not backing down despite his proximity. "How long before Naruto disappears completely?" "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "Months, perhaps. A year at most if nothing changes." The raw honesty in his voice doused her anger, replacing it with something closer to despair. "And the fragments? Can they really save you?" "Theoretically. The Soul King's power could overwhelm Yhwach's soul fragment, prevent it from completing the transformation. But that was already a long shot, and now Aizen has one of the fragments we need." Bambietta looked down at the shard embedded in her palm. "Well, he doesn't have this one. And it seems pretty attached to me, so that's something." A knock at the door interrupted them. Hashwolf entered without waiting for permission, his expression urgent. "Your Majesty, we have an unexpected visitor at the Eastern Gate. Captain Kairaku of the 8th Division, requesting parley under flag of truce." Naruto and Bambietta exchanged surprised glances. "Kairaku? Alone?" "With a small escort only," Hashwolf confirmed. "He claims to bring a proposal from what remains of Soul Society's leadership." Naruto considered this for a moment. "Bring him to the audience chamber. Ensure he's not armed, but treat him with respect." This could be significant. After Hashwolf departed, Bambietta raised an eyebrow. "You're actually going to listen to what a Shinigami captain has to say?" After everything they've done. The situation has changed, Naruto replied, straightening his uniform. Aizen now threatens both Soul Society and the Wandenrake. Strategic flexibility may be required. Right, Bambietta drawled. Strategic flexibility. Nothing to do with looking for allies now that Aizen's got one of our fragments. Naruto shot her a look that was half annoyance, half amusement. Your cynicism is noted, Bambietta. Now, shall we hear what Captain Kairaku has to offer? The audience chamber was a smaller, more intimate space than the main throne room. Naruto sat at a simple table rather than on an elevated throne, deliberately setting a tone of negotiation rather than imperial command. Bambietta stood at his right, while Hashwolf took position at his left. Captain Shunsui Kairaku entered with just 2 companions, his Lieutenant Nanao Ise and, surprisingly, Captain Jushiro Yukitake of the 13th Division. Both captains looked battle-worn but dignified, bowing slightly as they approached the table. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Your Majesty, Kairaku began, his usual laid-back demeanor subdued by circumstance. The situation has become complicated. Indeed, Naruto agreed. Aizen's escape changes the strategic landscape considerably. Kairaku's visible eye widened slightly. You know about that already? Our intelligence suggested he was your prisoner. A projection was our prisoner, Naruto corrected. The real Aizen has been free and plotting all along. He's now obtained one of the Soul King fragments we had secured. Yukitake stepped forward, concern evident on his pale face. Then it's as we feared. Aizen seeks to replace the Soul King, just as he attempted years ago. Which brings us to why we're here, Kairaku continued. Soul Society faces an existential threat from 2 directions, your invasion, and Aizen's schemes. Given the choice between these dangers, we find Aizen's the greater evil. You're proposing an alliance, Naruto surmised, his expression giving nothing away. A temporary cessation of hostilities, at minimum, Kairaku clarified. Both sides focus on stopping Aizen from collecting the remaining fragments, preventing him from ascending to the Soul King's throne. Bambietta laughed incredulously. So we're supposed to just forget centuries of Shinigami persecution? The near extinction of our people? All water under the bridge because you've got a bigger problem now? Yukitake met her gaze directly. We do not ask you to forget the past, stern Ritter. But we ask you to consider the future. If Aizen succeeds, there will be no Quincy, no Shinigami, only slaves to his new order. Pretty words, Bambietta sneered. But I notice you're not offering any actual concessions. Just asking us to put our revenge on hold while you deal with your rogue captain. What concessions would you find acceptable? Kairaku asked, surprising her with his directness. Naruto leaned forward. Full autonomy for the Quincy. Recognition of our right to balance the flow of souls as we see fit, without Shinigami interference. And a seat on the Central 46 to ensure our interests are represented in Soul Society's governance. The demands were bold, far-reaching. Nanao gasped audibly, while Yukitake's expression turned troubled. But Kairaku merely nodded thoughtfully. Those terms would require approval from what remains of Central 46, he said. But speaking personally, I believe they are negotiable. Shunsui, Yukitake began, clearly concerned about his friend's apparent concession. The old ways failed us, Jushiro, Kairaku interrupted gently. Perhaps it's time for a new approach. He turned back to Naruto. There is, however, another matter. The fragments themselves. What do you intend to do with them, should we succeed in keeping them from Aizen? It was the question Naruto had been expecting, yet still found difficult to answer truthfully. Before he could formulate a response, Bambietta spoke up. That depends, she said, raising her hand to display the throne fragment embedded in her palm. On whether they continue to choose their own hosts. Kairaku and Yukitake stared at the glowing crystal in undisguised shock. It bonded with you? Yukitake asked. Apparently we have compatible personalities, Bambietta replied with a smirk. It likes to blow things up too. Naruto shot her a warning look before addressing the captains. The fragments appear to resonate with individuals whose powers align with their nature. This one chose Bambietta. Others may choose different hosts, Shinigami, Quincy, perhaps even Hollows. The question of their ultimate fate may resolve itself as more are gathered. A diplomatic answer, Kairaku observed with a slight smile. But not one that addresses our concern about replacing the current Soul King. The current Soul King is a prisoner, Naruto said firmly. A mutilated god forced to serve as a linchpin for reality without consciousness or will. Whatever replaces him should at least have agency, don't you agree? The captains exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. We can agree the current system is imperfect, Yukitake said carefully. But any change must ensure the continued stability of all realms. Millions of souls depend on the balance the Soul King maintains. Then perhaps our first step should be understanding exactly what the Soul King is, Naruto suggested. And why he was dismembered in the first place. The Quincy records tell one story, but I suspect Soul Society's archives may tell another. Kairaku nodded slowly. A reasonable approach. We have access to records that even most captains aren't permitted to see. They may shed light on the original separation of worlds. Then we have a starting point, Naruto concluded. Information exchange, followed by coordinated efforts to track down the remaining fragments before Aizen can claim them. And a pause in active hostilities between our forces, Yukitake added hopefully. Naruto glanced at Hashwolf, who remained stoic, then at Bambietta, who rolled her eyes but nodded slightly. Agreed, Naruto said finally. A truce, effective immediately. My forces will cease offensive operations against Shinigami, provided the same courtesy is extended to us. Relief visibly washed over Yukitake's face, while Kairaku's expression remained carefully measured. We should formalize terms, the 8th Division captain suggested. Details of territory, movement permissions, communication protocols. Hashwolf will handle those negotiations, Naruto replied, rising from his seat to indicate the audience was concluding. I trust his judgment in these matters. As the Shinigami prepared to depart, Kairaku paused, looking directly at Naruto. One last question, if I may. What happens when this is over? When Aizen is defeated and the fragments are secured? Naruto met his gaze steadily. That depends on whether Soul Society can learn from its past mistakes. The Quincy will never again accept subjugation or extermination. Remember that, Captain Kairaku, when you speak to what remains of Central 46. Kairaku nodded, understanding the implicit warning. Fair enough. Until our next meeting, then. After the Shinigami had departed, Bambietta turned to Naruto with raised eyebrows. So we're buddies with Soul Society. Now. Should I expect a friendship bracelet from Captain Kachiki? Despite the gravity of the situation, Naruto couldn't suppress a smile. I wouldn't go that far. This is an alliance of necessity, nothing more. And Yawach? Hashwolf asked quietly. What would he say about this arrangement? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Naruto's expression hardened. Yawach sought the destruction of Soul Society at any cost, he replied. But I am not Yawach. Not yet, and if I have any say in the matter, not ever. Hashwolf bowed slightly, but his eyes remained troubled. As you say, Your Majesty. After he departed, Bambietta moved closer to Naruto. He's worried you're going off script, she observed. Deviating from Yawach's grand plan. I've been deviating from the moment I realized what was happening to me, Naruto admitted. Yawach wanted revenge and dominion. I wanted the same, at first. But now. Now what? Bambietta prompted when he trailed off. Naruto looked down at her hand, where the throne fragment pulsed steadily. Now I want freedom. For myself, for the Quincy, for all souls to choose their own path without gods or tyrants dictating their fate. That's some revolutionary talk for a king, Bambietta noted with a slight smile. Perhaps being king has shown me the flaws in monarchy, Naruto replied, returning her smile with a tired one of his own. Come, we should check on the fragment. I want to understand exactly what it's doing to you. As they left the audience chamber, neither noticed the small black butterfly that had been perched in a shadowed corner throughout their conversation. It fluttered away, passing effortlessly through walls until it reached Hashwaltha's private quarters. There, it dissolved into spiritual particles that were absorbed into the cracked mirror on the wall. Within the glass, Yawacha's reflection appeared, his expression dark with displeasure. So, he murmured to himself. The vessel thinks he can defy me. How disappointing. In the research wing of the Ice Palace, a skin examined Bambietta's hand where the throne fragment remained embedded. Various spiritual energy sensors surrounded them, recording data on the fragment's integration with her body. Fascinating, a skin muttered, adjusting one of the instruments. It's not just attached to you, it's literally rewriting your spiritual structure at the quantum level. Is that supposed to be comforting? Bambietta asked drily. Because it sounds horrifying. Oh, it's terrifying from a personal autonomy perspective, a skin agreed cheerfully. But scientifically? Absolutely riveting. Naruto, who had been reviewing the data readouts, looked up with a frown. The fragment is changing her, but not consuming her like Yawacha's soul fragment does to me. It's more symbiotic. That tracks with what I'm seeing, a skin confirmed. The throne fragment isn't overriding Bambietta's identity, it's enhancing it, amplifying aspects of her power that already existed. Like my explosions? Bambietta questioned. Exactly. But where before you could only charge objects with explosive energy, now you appear to be developing the ability to manipulate space itself around those explosions. A skin pointed to a particularly complex energy pattern on one of his screens. See this? When you triggered a test explosion earlier, you actually created a microscopic pocket dimension that contained and redirected the blast. Bambietta stared at her hand with new appreciation. So I could, what, create explosion-powered wormholes or something? Theoretically, a skin shrugged. Though I wouldn't recommend experimenting with that particular application without considerable practice. Tearing holes in reality tends to have unpredictable consequences. Naruto approached, gently taking Bambietta's hand to examine the fragment more closely. Can you feel its consciousness? Its memories? Bambietta nodded slowly. Sometimes. Especially when I'm not focusing on anything else. It shows me images, feelings. A time before there was soul. Society or Hueco Mundo. When everything was one world, and the Soul King walked among souls as their protector, not their prisoner. The original balance, Naruto murmured. Before the Shinigami nobles decided to seize control by dismembering their god. Pretty messed up origin story for the supposed good guys, Bambietta commented. History is written by the victors, a skin said philosophically. And the Shinigami nobles certainly won that particular conflict. A knock at the laboratory door interrupted them. A young Quincy soldier entered, bowing nervously. Your Majesty, Sternritter Hashwalth requests your presence in the communications center. The Shinigami have sent information about the remaining fragments. Naruto nodded. Tell him I'll be there shortly. After the messenger departed, Naruto turned back to Bambietta and Eskin. Continue the tests. I want to know everything about how this fragment integrates with a host. It may be crucial when we confront Aizen again. And if he's done the same thing? Bambietta asked. If he's bonded with the Koryu fragment? Then we'll face an enemy who can manipulate the boundaries between worlds at will, Naruto replied grimly. All the more reason to secure the remaining fragments before he does. He turned to leave, but Bambietta caught his arm. Naruto. Be careful around Hashwalth. I don't think he's fully on board with your new direction. Naruto's expression softened slightly. I know. But he served the Wandenrake faithfully for centuries. His caution is understandable. It's not caution I'm worried about, Bambietta said quietly. It's loyalty, specifically, who he's actually loyal to. Naruto studied her face for a moment, then nodded. I'll keep my eyes open. You focus on mastering that fragment. We may need your new abilities sooner than we'd like. After he left, Askin gave Bambietta a speculative look. You're concerned Hashwalth reports to Yawatch directly, aren't you? Wouldn't you be? She countered. He's been Yawatch's right hand for centuries. If anyone would prioritize Yawatch's return over Naruto's survival, it's him. Askin nodded thoughtfully. A fair assessment. But then, loyalty is such a fluid concept among our kind. Power recognizes power, and right now, Naruto has it. And when that changes? Bambietta challenged. When Yawatch's soul fragment progresses further? Where will your loyalty lie then, Askin? The lanky Sternritter smiled enigmatically. I always bet on the winning horse, my dear. The real question is, who will that be when the race concludes? Bambietta didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she looked down at the fragment in her palm, watching it pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Power came with a price, she'd always known that. But the cost of this power might be higher than any of them had anticipated. In the communications center, Hashwalth stood before a large screen displaying a map of the spiritual realms. Various points were marked with glowing indicators, representing known and suspected locations of Soul King fragments. Naruto entered, immediately noting the presence of Shinigami on the other side of the video connection, Captain Yukitake and a white-haired woman he didn't recognize. Your Majesty, Hashwalth greeted with a formal bow. Captain Yukitake has shared the archives as promised. This is Captain Isane Kotetsu of the 4th Division, who has been researching the fragments from a healing perspective. Naruto nodded to the Shinigami. Captain. What have you discovered? According to the oldest records in Soul Society, Yukitake began, there are 7 major fragments of the Soul King in total, each representing a different aspect of his power. 7. Naruto questioned, surprised. Yawatch's memories only accounted for 5. The 2 he was unaware of were hidden even from the Quincy King, Isane explained. They represent aspects of the Soul King that were sealed away first, before the main dismemberment occurred. She gestured to the map, where 7 points glowed with different colors. We've identified the Koryu fragment, which controls boundaries and interdimensional pathways. And the Throne fragment, which governs space and domain creation. That leaves 5 more. The Oaken fragment, Yukitake continued, which controls access to the royal realm. The Hogyoku fragment, a piece of which Aizen inadvertently created in his experiments. The Mimihagi fragment, which governs stagnation and stillness. The Heart fragment, which controls life and regeneration. And finally, the Crown fragment, which contains the Soul King's primary consciousness and will. And their locations? Naruto pressed. Isane looked uncomfortable. We know some with certainty. The Oaken fragment is forged into the Royal Guard's access key. The Mimihagi fragment was, recently absorbed by Captain Yukitake during the last conflict. Yukitake nodded gravely. It has sustained my life for centuries, though at considerable cost. I can feel its consciousness, similar to how your Sternritter describes her experience with the Throne fragment. The Heart fragment is believed to be in Hueco Mundo still, but not in Las Noches, Isane continued. Our records suggest it's hidden within the forest of Minos, guarded by an ancient hollow that predates Baragon's rule. And the Crown and Hogyoku fragments? Naruto asked. The Hogyoku fragment's location is unknown, Yukitake admitted. Aizen's artificial Hogyoku was destroyed, but the original fragment it was modeled after has never been located. And the Crown fragment? Hashwalth pressed when the Shinigami hesitated. Yukitake and Isane exchanged glances before Yukitake sighed. According to our most restricted archives, the crown fragment was, sealed within the human world, embodied in a living soul that would be reincarnated through the generations, always hidden in plain sight. A human carries the Soul King's primary consciousness? Naruto asked incredulously. Not exactly human, Aizen clarified. The vessel appears human but possesses extraordinary spiritual potential. The records suggest they would be drawn to the spiritual world instinctively, often becoming involved in conflicts between Shinigami and Hollows. Understanding dawned on Naruto's face. Kurosaki. Ichigo Kurosaki. Yukitake nodded reluctantly. We believe so, yes. His spiritual pressure has always defied categorization, Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy, and something else entirely. The crown fragment would explain his unprecedented power and his unique ability to transcend spiritual classifications. Where is Kurosaki now? Hashwolf asked. Missing, Yukitake admitted. He disappeared shortly after your invasion began. We believe he's seeking training in the royal realm, but we have no way to confirm this since communications with the royal guard were severed. Naruto absorbed this information thoughtfully. So we have two fragments, one possessed by us, one by Aizen. Yukitake contains a third. The oaken fragment is in the royal realm. The heart fragment is in Hueco Mundo. And the crown and Hogyoku fragments are unknown variables. That summarizes our current knowledge, Yukitake confirmed. Aizen will go after the heart fragment next, Naruto predicted. It's the most accessible target, and its regenerative properties would enhance his already formidable powers. We've reached the same conclusion, Aizen nodded. Captain Kairaku has dispatched a team to Hueco Mundo already, but they'll need support. The forest of Minos is vast and treacherous. I'll lead a team to rendezvous with your Shinigami, Naruto decided. Bambietta's new abilities may prove crucial in navigating the forest. Hashwolf's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Is it wise to risk both yourself and the throne fragment on the same mission, Your Majesty? The alternative is allowing Aizen to claim another fragment, Naruto countered. That's a greater risk. After finalizing coordination details with the Shinigami, Naruto ended the communication. As the screen went dark, Hashwolf turned to him with obvious concern. You trust their information too readily, he said. The Shinigami have deceived us before. This isn't about trust, Naruto replied. It's about shared interest. Neither of us wants Aizen to replace the Soul King. And what of our original mission? Hashwolf pressed. The vengeance we swore. The justice for our fallen kin. Naruto studied his second-in-command carefully. Justice and vengeance are not the same, Hashwolf. One looks backward, the other forward. I'm increasingly convinced our future lies beyond mere retribution. Yawatch would not agree, Hashwolf said quietly. No, Naruto acknowledged. He wouldn't. But as I told Bambietta earlier, I am not Yawatch. The two men stared at each other, tension crackling between them. Finally, Hashwolf bowed slightly. As you say, Your Majesty. I live to serve the Wandenrake and its king. He paused deliberately before adding, whoever that may be. With that parting comment, he turned and left the communications center. Naruto watched him go, the implicit threat in Hashwolf's words hanging in the air like a sword ready to fall. In the depths of Hueco Mundo, far from Las Noches, Aizen stood at the edge of the forest of Minos. Beside him, Ulquiorra waited silently, the vial containing the Koryu fragment clutched in his pale hand. The heart fragment lies at the center of this forest, Aizen said, gazing into the dense tangle of crystalline trees. Guarded by a hollow older than time itself. The primitive Minos will pose no challenge, Ulquiorra observed. No, Aizen agreed. But the Guardian will. It was once the Soul King's pet, the only being he trusted completely. When the dismemberment occurred, it followed the heart fragment into exile, becoming hollow over the millennia of isolation. You speak as if you witnessed these events personally, Ulquiorra noted. Aizen smiled enigmatically. In a manner of speaking, I did. The Hogyoku showed me visions, memories encoded in its structure. Memories of a time before separation, before the Soul King's imprisonment. He extended his hand toward Ulquiorra, who obediently placed the vial containing the Koryu fragment in his palm. Aizen studied the pulsing yellow crystal thoughtfully. It resists me, he mused. Unlike your Sternritter friend, I cannot form a bond with this fragment. Interesting. Is that a problem, Lord Aizen? Ulquiorra asked. Merely an unexpected variable, Aizen replied. The fragments have their own will, it seems. Their own preferences for hosts. He pocketed the vial and stepped forward into the forest. Come. We have a heart to claim before our Quincy and Shinigami friends arrive to contest our prize. As they ventured deeper into the crystalline trees, thousands of eyes watched. From the shadows, Jillians, Ajuchas, and other Minos-class hollows, instinctively giving way before Aizen's overwhelming presence. None dared approach the former captain, sensing something beyond mere power in his spiritual pressure, something ancient and terrible that even their primal instincts recognized as untouchable. At the heart of the forest, something stirred from eons of slumber, sensing the approach of familiar energy. Eyes that had not opened since the dawn of the current world order slowly lifted heavy lids. A monstrous form unfurled from its resting place around a pulsing red crystal embedded in the largest tree at the forest center. The guardian awakened, ready to fulfill its eternal duty once more. Bambietta flexed her hand, watching as the throne fragment pulsed in response to her will. Over the past hours of experimentation, she'd begun to develop limited control over its spatial manipulation properties. Small portals formed between her fingers, connecting points in space separated by mere inches. Not exactly world-changing yet, she muttered to herself. Progress often begins small, came Naruto's voice from the doorway. She looked up to find him watching her practice, an unreadable expression on his face. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to see you're gaining control, he replied, entering the laboratory. That's good. We'll need those abilities soon. Let me guess, another fragment hunt. Naruto nodded. The heart fragment, hidden in the forest of Minos. We leave in 2 hours, alongside a Shinigami team. Bambietta raised an eyebrow. Joint operation with the Shinigami? That'll be fun and not at all awkward. Professional courtesy will suffice, Naruto said dryly. You don't have to like them to work with them. And Hashwolf? Will he be joining our little interspecies field trip? No. He'll remain here to oversee our forces in the Siriidii. Naruto hesitated before adding, your concerns about his loyalty may have merit. He's becoming more assertive about Yhwach's original plans. Bambietta set aside her practice, giving Naruto her full attention. Meaning he might try to accelerate your Yhwach transformation rather than prevent it. It's possible, Naruto acknowledged. Which is why I'm leaving a skin here to watch him. A skin? Bambietta couldn't hide her surprise. I mean, he's crafty, but can he really stand against Hashwolf if things go sideways? He won't have to fight him, just monitor him and alert us if anything changes. Naruto approached, studying the fragment in her palm more closely. How does it feel now? Any negative effects? Besides the occasional flash of memories from before the universe existed? Nothing too bad, Bambietta replied with a shrug. It's actually kind of comforting, in a weird way. Like having a second consciousness that isn't trying to hijack mine. Something like envy flickered across Naruto's face. That's good. The fragments seem to form genuinely symbiotic relationships with compatible hosts. Unlike Yhwach's soul fragment, Bambietta observed quietly. Naruto nodded, his expression darkening. Yhwach never intended symbiosis. Only consumption and rebirth. That's because he's an asshole, Bambietta said bluntly, drawing a surprised laugh from Naruto. An accurate if simplistic assessment, he agreed, his mood lightening slightly. But an asshole with a long-term plan that's been in motion for centuries. We shouldn't underestimate him, even as a fragment of consciousness within me. Bambietta reached out impulsively, taking his hand in hers. We'll fix this. Get the heart fragment, find the others, figure out how to kick Yhwach out of your soul. I promise. Naruto looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself to show. Bambi, he began, using a tone she'd never heard from him before. If this doesn't work, if Yhwach's consciousness overtakes mine completely, I need you to promise me something else. Don't. She cut him off, tightening her grip on his hand. Don't you dare ask me to kill you or some heroic bullshit like that. A sad smile touched his lips. Not kill me. Save the others. Lead them somewhere better than endless war and revenge. The Quincy deserve a future beyond Yhwach's shadow. The weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. You're asking me to, what? Take over if you turn into Yhwach? I'm asking you to remember who you are, Naruto corrected gently. Who we all are beyond the letters he assigned us, beyond the powers he distributed. We're more than extensions of his will, Bambi. We always have been. Before she could formulate a response to this unexpected declaration, a surge of energy pulsed through the fragment in her palm. Bambietta gasped as vivid images flooded her mind, a massive tree-like structure at the center of a crystal forest, a red pulsing heart embedded in its trunk, and a colossal hollow wrapped protectively around it. Bambietta? Naruto's concerned voice seemed distant as the vision consumed her awareness. The heart, she managed, her eyes glowing with the fragment's power. I can see it. And, something's happening. Someone's approaching it. The vision shifted, showing Aizen and Ulquiorra moving through the forest of Minos, drawing ever closer to the central tree. Aizen, she spat. He's already there, already found it. Naruto's hands gripped her shoulders. Can you tell how close he is? Bambietta forced herself to focus, to direct the fragment's vision more precisely. He's still an hour from the center, maybe more. The guardian is awake now, preparing to defend the heart. The vision faded abruptly, leaving her gasping and disoriented. Naruto steadied her as she swayed on her feet. We need to move now, he decided. If we wait 2 hours as planned, the heart fragment will already be in Aizen's possession. How? Bambietta asked, still trying to process what she'd experienced. Even if we leave immediately, how do we get there before him? Naruto looked pointedly at the fragment embedded in her palm. You just showed me you can see the heart fragment from here. The next step is reaching it directly. Understanding dawned on her face. You want me to create a portal? A spatial corridor directly to the heart fragment? The throne fragment controls space, Naruto reasoned. And it's clearly capable of connecting to the other fragments across dimensions. With the right focus, you should be able to create a direct path. Should being the operative word, Bambietta muttered. I've barely managed to connect points in the same room, let alone across dimensions. The fragment will guide you, Naruto insisted. It showed you the heart for a reason. It wants the fragments reunited, just not in the way Aizen intends. Bambietta took a deep breath, looking down at the glowing crystal in her palm. This is insane. But then, that's kind of our specialty, isn't it? Naruto smiled. I've always valued your capacity for controlled chaos. Flattery will get you everywhere, she replied with a nervous grin. Alright, let's do this. But we should bring backup, not a full team, but someone with complementary abilities. Who do you suggest? Bambietta thought for a moment. Giselle. Her blood manipulation could be useful against hollows, and if this guardian is as ancient as it seems, her zombification might actually work on it. Naruto nodded. A logical choice, despite your personal differences. I'll have her meet us in the deployment chamber in 15 minutes. Can you be ready by then? Do I have a choice? Bambietta countered, already beginning to gather her equipment. There's always a choice, Bambi, Naruto said seriously. I won't force you to use the fragment this way if you're not comfortable with it. She paused, surprised by his consideration. Most kings, most leaders of any kind, would have simply ordered her to comply regardless of the risks. But Naruto had always been different, even before the current crisis. It was one of the many reasons she'd followed him so loyally all these years. I'm ready, she assured him, a new determination in her voice. Let's steal a heart. The deployment chamber was a large, circular room designed for opening controlled garganta to various realms. Normally, it would be bustling with activity as troops prepared for missions. Now, it stood nearly empty, with only Naruto, Bambietta, and Giselle present. So we're crashing Aizen's heart-stealing party? Giselle asked, a disturbing eagerness in her voice. Sounds romantic. Focus, Gigi, Bambietta said tersely. This isn't one of your weird fantasies. We're retrieving a fragment of the Soul King before Aizen can claim it. Still sounds romantic to me, Giselle giggled, twirling a strand of her black hair around her finger. Racing the villain for a magical heart. Very fairy tale. Naruto interrupted before Bambietta could respond with what would undoubtedly be a scathing retort. Giselle, I need you to understand the seriousness of this mission. The heart fragment controls life and regeneration. If Aizen bonds with it, he'll become virtually unkillable. As opposed to just mostly unkillable now. Giselle quipped, but her expression sobered slightly. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I know what's at stake. My blood is ready to serve. Good, Naruto turned to Bambietta. Are you ready to attempt the portal? She nodded, though her expression betrayed her nervousness. As ready as I'll ever be. Just, stand back. If this goes wrong, it could get messy. Naruto and Giselle moved to the edge of the chamber, giving Bambietta space to work. She took a deep breath, centering herself as she raised her hand, the throne fragment glowing brighter in response. Show me the way, she whispered to it. Show me the path to your heart. The fragment pulsed, sending waves of energy up her arm and throughout her body. Bambietta gasped as knowledge flowed into her mind, not just images this time, but understanding. The complex mathematics of spatial folding, the quantum mechanics of interdimensional travel, the precise spiritual frequency needed to connect with the heart fragment's location. She extended her hand forward, focusing on creating a tear in reality itself. At first, nothing happened except a slight distortion in the air before her. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she poured more of her spiritual energy into the attempt. It's not working, she gritted out. I can see it, but I can't reach it. Don't force it, Naruto advised. The fragment isn't just a tool, it's a consciousness. Work with it, not against it. Bambietta nodded, adjusting her approach. Instead of trying to bend reality through sheer force of will, she opened herself to the fragment's guidance, allowing its ancient knowledge to flow through her naturally. The air before her began to shimmer more intensely, taking on a reddish hue. A small tear appeared, barely the size of a coin, revealing a glimpse of crystalline trees beyond. That's it, Naruto encouraged. You're connecting to the forest of Minos. Bambietta focused harder, widening the tear inch by inch. As it grew to the size of a dinner plate, she felt resistance, as if something on the other side was pushing back against her efforts. Something's blocking me, she gasped. A barrier or someone who controls boundaries, Naruto finished grimly. Aizen. He must be using the Koryu fragment to interfere. The realization sparked anger in Bambietta's chest. This smug, manipulative bastard had played them from the beginning, had hurt Naruto, had stolen their fragment, and now he was trying to block her too. Oh, I don't think so, she snarled. Drawing on her natural affinity for destruction, she channeled explosive energy into the edges of the portal. The combination of space manipulation and her explosive power created a unique effect, the tear in reality detonated outward, forcing itself wider against the opposing force. The portal expanded violently to human-sized dimensions, stabilizing into a shimmering gateway that revealed the crystalline forest beyond. Through it, they could see the massive tree that housed the heart fragment, still distant but now accessible. "Holy shit," Giselle breathed. "You actually did it." Bambietta swayed slightly, the effort having drained her considerably. Naruto was at her side instantly, supporting her with an arm around her waist. "Impressive," he said softly. "But can you maintain it long enough for us to pass through?" "Only one way to find out," Bambietta replied, straightening with effort. "We should go now, before Aizen realizes what we're doing and counters more aggressively." Naruto nodded, his expression shifting to battle readiness. "Giselle, you go first. Secure the other side. Bambietta and I will follow." Giselle stepped up to the portal without hesitation, her usual playfulness replaced by professional focus. "See you on the other side," she said before stepping through the shimmering gateway. As she vanished into the forest of Minos, Naruto turned to Bambietta. "Can you maintain the portal from the other side, or will it collapse when you cross?" "I think I can hold it," she said, though uncertainty tinged her voice. "But we should assume this is a one-way trip. Getting back might require alternative methods." Naruto smiled slightly. "With you and Giselle along, I expected nothing less than improvisation." Together, they stepped through the portal into Hueco Mundo's most dangerous forest. The air on the other side felt thick and heavy, charged with spiritual particles and the lingering presence of countless hollows. All around them, crystalline trees stretched toward a black sky, their surfaces reflecting distorted images of the three Quincy. Giselle stood a few feet ahead, already scanning their surroundings for threats. "No immediate welcoming committee," she reported. "But there are eyes everywhere." Naruto nodded, feeling the countless hollow presences lurking in the shadows. "They're watching, but not attacking. Unusual behavior for Minos." "Maybe they sense the fragment," Bambietta suggested, focusing on maintaining their portal. It remained stable behind them, though keeping it open required constant attention. "Or maybe they're just scared of something bigger." Like that, Giselle pointed toward the central tree, where a massive spiritual pressure had begun to rise. Even at this distance, they could feel its ancient power, primal, hungry, yet strangely intelligent. "The Guardian," Naruto identified. "And it seems Aizen has reached it before us." In the distance, flashes of light and energy signaled an ongoing battle. Explosions of blue and green spiritual energy lit up the dark forest, briefly illuminating the colossal form of what appeared to be a serpentine hollow wrapped around the central tree. "We need to hurry," Naruto decided. "Bambietta, can you create another portal closer to the tree?" She shook her head, strain evident on her face. "Maintaining this one is taking everything I've got. We'll have to go the old-fashioned way." "Then let's move." Naruto drew Zanka no Tachi, the blade igniting with suppressed flames. "Stay close. The Minos will be the least of our worries once we near the Guardian." They set off through the forest, moving as quickly as Bambietta's condition allowed. Behind them, the portal remained open, a shimmering lifeline back to the Ice Palace. As they progressed deeper into the forest, the crystalline trees grew denser and taller, their surfaces reflecting increasingly disturbing images, not of the Quincy passing by, but of events long past, memories embedded in the very fabric of this place. "The trees are showing the Soul King's dismemberment," Naruto observed, his voice hushed as they passed a particularly vivid reflection showing robed figures surrounding a bound entity. "The original sin of Soul Society." "Cheery decor," Giselle commented, though even she seemed subdued by the macabre images. "No wonder Aizen feels at home here." As they drew closer to the central tree, the battle sounds intensified. They could now make out specific spiritual pressures, Aizen's overwhelming presence, Okuyura's cold precision, and something else, something ancient that made even Naruto pause momentarily. "The Guardian is familiar somehow," he murmured. "Like a memory just beyond my grasp." Yawacha's memory? Bambietta asked quietly. Naruto nodded slowly. He knew this creature once. Before the separation. Before everything. They reached a clearing that provided their first clear view of the central tree and the battle raging around it. The tree itself was enormous, at least 100 meters tall, its crystalline trunk glowing with a pulsing red light that emanated from something embedded at its center. Wrapped around the trunk was a hollow unlike any they had ever seen. It resembled a massive serpent with feathered wings, its mask bearing 12 eyes arranged in a circle. Parts of its body seemed to shift between solid form and pure spiritual energy, as if it existed partially in another dimension. Aizen and Ulquiorra fought against this monstrosity, their attack seemingly ineffective against its regenerative capabilities. Each time they severed part of its body, the Guardian simply reformed, drawing power from the heart fragment embedded in the tree. "Impressive, isn't it?" came a voice from their left. The three Quincy turned to find a familiar figure leaning casually against a nearby tree, Jin Ikamaru, former captain of the 3rd Division and Aizen's supposed betrayer, watching the battle with his perpetual fox-like smile. "Ikamaru," Naruto acknowledged, Zenka no Tachi raised defensively. "Another of Aizen's resurrected pawns?" "Pawn. That's cold," Jin replied, his smile never wavering. "I prefer to think of myself as an independent contractor who happens to share Aizen's current goals." "Which are?" Bambietta demanded. Jin opened one eye slightly, his gaze unnervingly direct. "Same as yours, little bomb queen. Collecting fragments, changing the world order. The usual megalomaniacal stuff." "You died in the Winter War," Naruto stated. "Aizen killed you himself." "Did I? Did he?" Jin's smile widened. "Memory's such a tricky thing, ain't it? Especially when Aizen's involved. Reality gets flexible. He's stalling us," Giselle realized suddenly. "Keeping us talking while Aizen secures the fragment." Jin applauded lazily. "Smart girl. Yes, that was the plan. But honestly, I'm not sure Aizen Taishu needs the help. That Guardian is giving him more trouble than expected, but it's only a matter of time." As if to punctuate his words, a massive explosion shook the forest. They turned to see Aizen delivering what appeared to be a killing blow to the Guardian, his sword piercing directly through one of the 12 eyes on its mask. The creature let out an unearthly howl that made the very air vibrate with pain and rage. "That's our cue," Naruto said urgently. "Jin or no Jin, we move now." Without waiting for a response from the former captain, Naruto flash-stepped toward the central tree, Bambietta and Giselle following close behind. Jin made no move to stop them, his smile taking on a strangely satisfied quality as they departed. "Right on schedule," he murmured to himself. Just as he predicted. Aizen stood before the something went wrong with this response, please try again. Begin the chapter that comes next. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.